We are recording.
Meeting, please come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
We have Commissioners Levine, Berard, McLean Hill, Noonan, and Vasquez present.
This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. I have no opening remarks. We have 2 public comment cards that I'm aware of. Barbara, please call the public commenters.
Okay, the first speaker is Tom Pike.
Hi, I'm here today actually in my official capacity as a representative of the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council, but I was told I have to speak during this time as the resolution that we passed unanimously at the last Los Feliz Neighborhood Council board meeting has not yet been filed. So the LFNC, we did a survey of stakeholders, got 230 respondents. Liked the Rowena Reservoir to be open to the public. And as such, we passed a resolution unanimously recommending that that this board work with us to accomplish that in a responsible way. There are a few challenges that have come up in the course of our discussions with LADWP representatives and with stakeholders that would need to be addressed in order to open the reservoir to the public. There's equipment on site that would need to be fenced off. Retrofitting study must be done to ensure that the footpaths are safe. Environmental studies to assess the impact on waterfowl. Trash pickup needs to be accommodated for. Traffic studies need to be conducted. Water safety needs to be examined. A potential solution to this could be coordinating with Rec and Parks to manage the surface of the reservoir. We are aware that the original design of the reservoir was not intended to be a park, but our community has wanted this for a long time, and it doesn't seem like there are any deal breakers, any things that we could not overcome if we worked together to accomplish this. So more about the survey. As I said, it was 89% of respondents want it to be opened as a park during daylight hours. That even includes a supermajority, 71%, who live immediately around the reservoir, which confirms what we've seen historically. There have been pretty much perennial petitions from the public to open it up, and favorable articles in the LA press over the last 20 years. The survey also shows that people near the reservoir are currently almost all driving to get to parks. If we opened the reservoir, the number of people, if we assume that the people who are currently driving and say they would walk, that cuts 14,000 miles annually driven and 11,000 pounds of carbon from being emitted in the atmosphere, and has further benefits for public health.
Can you just repeat the name of the organization?
Los Feliz Neighborhood Council.
Los Feliz, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Wendy Schneider.
It's Wendy Schneider, and I am here today in my capacity as a Los Angeles County ratepayer and also as a resident of Crowley Lake, California. And I would like to talk about the Commission's action in greatly reducing or ceasing the amount of irrigation permitted in southern Mono County. And although there is no agenda item about this today in the public session, I know that you are addressing the lawsuit filed by Mono County. Recently, the LADWP's demur to that lawsuit was overruled, and so that lawsuit will be going forward. And my first comment is in my capacity as a ratepayer. I own a home in Pacific Palisades, California, and have been a ratepayer for about 30 years. Historically, most notably with respect to Mono Lake and Owens Lake, costly environmental remediation bills have resulted from actions that LADWP has taken in the Eastern Sierra, and I am concerned that with respect to the current action, ceasing or drastically reducing irrigation in southern Mono County, similar costly environmental remediation bills will eventually result, and I and other ratepayers will have to foot that bill. Secondly, I would like to comment as a resident of Crowley Lake, California, I am very close to the affected area. And I would just like to explain to the board something they may not understand about the ecology of the area. The irrigation that LADWP has been permitting for about 80 years has caused a lush wetland meadow to arise in northern Long Valley. And this meadow is very beautiful and is habitat to lots of different kinds of wildlife and has basically sort of in effect replaced the wetland meadow that used to be at the southern end of the valley but was destroyed when the Long Valley Dam was constructed and Crowley Lake was filled. So this northern meadow that is resulting from irrigation to a great extent is mitigating the negative environmental impacts of losing that first natural southern meadow. And I would just like to point out that if this board decides to cease or drastically reduce irrigation, that lush wetland meadow in the north part of the valley will dry up, and there will be many detrimental effects, one of which I believe you are aware of, is the ranching economy in Mono County will be significantly adversely affected. The recreational tourism economy also, as it will turn from a lush green, beautiful landscape into a dry, desert-like landscape. And a couple of things you may not have considered is that likely dust problems will arise if this wetland meadow becomes desertified, and also the local residents will be exposed to increased danger of wildfire. And those are just some of the negative effects that will arise if this meadow is dried out. And the dry out will occur inevitably and pretty quickly if irrigation is not allowed to continue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, we generally don't do questions in public comment, but we really appreciate your comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. General Manager, who looks different.
Good morning. Just a couple quick things. First, last week we had a very nice press conference at Hyperion wastewater treatment plant. Rich is going to have a presentation that covers the subject matter of that and our look to meet the mayor's latest challenge. We have real good challenges both on water and power now in terms of getting to 100% clean energy and also eliminating all wastewater going to the ocean. And so water has a challenge ahead of it. Rich will detail that today, but it was we got good press coverage, and I think that unlike 25 years ago when Rich and I were both involved with trying to make more use of wastewater, the public sentiment and appetite for what we do with our local water resources has greatly changed, and I think that at the time it was really good to move forward on local water resources like this. The other thing is I know a number of the board members have gotten calls and comments, questions about our ADU policy. That's the auxiliary dwelling units. So probably the second meeting in March, we'll be bringing information to you on that, as well as potential changes to the policy that'll help to facilitate more folks being allowed to have auxiliary units in their backyards and help with the housing crisis in LA. So just there's a lot of questions. We will be bringing some to you in March, a presentation and a proposed to change the policy that's been in place since the early 70s.
Thank you. Comments from commissioners on agendized items and requests from commissioners relating to departmental operations. Commissioner Vasquez.
Please go ahead. I would like to request staff to come back with a report around the Rowena Reservoir and what are our plans. I know that there has been already some plans, and I want to make sure that all of us commissioners understand and know what are some of the plans around the Rowena Reservoir in the face of especially having a neighborhood council resolution before us. So if you can come back, I don't know what will be a time frame that it will be doable and possible, in which we can learn about what are the plans or what's already happening with the reservoir area.
Can I offer this? Rich is working on this issue now. Maybe next meeting we can just give you at least a briefing of what is Rowena Reservoir, what the situation is, because it'll take a little bit of time for the work that they're going on, on possibilities for the future. But maybe we'll start with a briefing so get you familiar with the property and why it is what it is today.
Well, I'm very familiar with the property because I used to live by there. So, but
yeah, we'll let you know essentially what we've told the NC out there, which is favorable news, I think. So
absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
Other commissioner comment?
I would like to take a moment just to applaud our insurance division as well as our broker, having evaluated our potential liabilities for fire risks. I think that our broker and our team has done an outstanding job. You really have performed above par, compared to other entities. That being said, even though I truly, truly commend you, I would like your division to consider risk transfer methodologies that include cat bonds, parametrics, and inverse condemnation. And I sent you an email about that too. But I think that to be forward-thinking, we really need to consider insurance practices in that regard. Thank you.
And I'd just like to just understand, I appreciate that we will have a report in March on the ADUs. I actually had a commissioner request on that topic some months ago now, and wondered if this report was responsive to that request.
It should answer that question. So we're trying to make sure you have all the information, current policy, recommendations that we have to make changes, and the chance for the board to adopt the policy. So I believe, I'll go back and look, but I believe that'll respond to all your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Ratepayer advocate.
I will have brief comments on items 8B and C, and they're related, with implications for their related board items.
Discussion with neighborhood council representatives on any neighborhood council resolution or community impact statement filed with the city clerk which relate to any agenda item listed or being considered on this agenda for the Water and Power Board.
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Okay, we have items 11 through 23, all of which are eligible for consent. Do any commissioners wish to remove any of those items from what would be a consent calendar?
I'd like a presentation on item 21, and in
I'm
light
sorry, on what?
21,
Okay.
and in light of the board presentation on the Consumers Bill of Rights, I'd also like to hold item 22 till after that.
I'm sorry, I didn't,
So item 21 and 22.
okay.
I like a presentation on 14 or discussion on 14.
Which one?
14.
14, okay. And we have a speaker card on item 12, so we will remove that. So removing items 12, 14, 21, and 22. The remaining items that I would entertain a motion for on consent are 11, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 23. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those aforementioned items are approved, and the remaining items which we'll hear after the management reports are 12, 14, 21, and 22. So we go to 8A Hyperion.
So as Marty mentioned last week, we had.
Well, I'm sorry, Rich.
Oh.
We do have a speaker card on 8A. You want to have that speaker speak before or after the presentation?
They can go before.
Okay.
Okay, for 8A, it's Jack Humperville.
Good morning. Seems like coming here more often than I'd like. Noticed,
We
read
love
about.
having you here, Jeff.
Pardon?
We love having you here.
Well, it's always. Thank you. I wish you'd serve coffee, though. No.
It's accessible in the cafeteria.
Thank you very much. I can't bring it in here, though. Under Hyperion, I've noticed that it's going to be an $8 billion type ticket, and obviously that's going to have a significant impact on rates. One of the things I'd like to see is a detailed financial analysis of it, and especially with regards to the internal rates of return and the net present values. One of the things in just scanning through this is that the cost, life cycle cost per acre foot is $1,625. I have no idea how they came up with that. In the past, that we've seen these kind of numbers, and they make no sense whatsoever from a financial point of view. It's hocus pocus. Mathematics just plain doesn't work. So I think as we go ahead. Not to put the kibosh on this, but I think we should have a very good understanding of the rates of return as well as the impact on our bills. And then, of course, this is going to be in addition to what's going to hit us for on the power side. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, as Marty mentioned, last Thursday, the mayor held a press conference to announce that the Hyperion wastewater treatment plant down at the coast will become a 100% recycled water plant. And that is just huge news. And really the meaning behind that and the reason for that, the result of that, is really going to result in what I would say is probably the most significant announcement regarding local resources in Los Angeles' history. And I may sound hyperbolic, but I don't think I can be too over the top on really what this means to the city of Los Angeles. It really is going to fundamentally change the way we manage water within the city of Los Angeles. And you'll see why at the end of this presentation. So this is a little bit deeper dive than we had time to go with the mayor's announcement last week. And you will see at the end of the presentation that this project really doesn't go forward without the collaboration with the Water Replenishment District here in Southern California. And with us today is their board president, Mr. John Allen, general manager, Rob Whitaker, and one of their directors, Robert Catherman, all here today. And also with us from LA Sanitation, who is obviously our number one partner within the city of Los Angeles. From their engineering group, we have Mr. Ron Mayuyu and Nasir Imami, and they're in the corner there. At the table is our own Rafael Villegas, who manages our local groundwater program, and Diane Gatza, who's with the Water Replenishment District. So I'm going to turn the mic over to them.
Thank you, Rich.
You better rise up to the level of expectation that I've set.
No problem.
And then I'll have some closing comments.
Good morning, President Levine, Board Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present on LADWP's Hyperion Reuse and Groundwater Development Program. Over the past several months, we've been actively studying the feasibility of maximizing recycled water from Hyperion and using that advanced treated purified water to replenish the local West Coast and Central basins. As you will see, that this initiative has the potential to dramatically increase our local water supplies, but also add to the city's resiliency. It is projected that this program will provide about a third of the city's water demand and will actually allow us to begin building storage in case of emergencies. Before I discuss our efforts at Hyperion, I'd like to briefly describe the water system's multifaceted approach to local water supply development. Over the last couple of years, we've undertaken targeted planning efforts in the areas of stormwater, recycled water, groundwater, and water conservation, all of which are shown here. And what we've learned from those studies and what we will learn from the potential at Hyperion will set the future local water supply goals in the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, which will come before you towards the later part of next year. So why do we want to develop Hyperion? So we've had several directives over the years that have moved us more towards sustainability. You have Mayor Garcetti's Executive Directive number 5, the Sustainable City Plan, LADWP GM goals for 2019. The water system has strategic planning goals to diversify our water supply portfolio. And just last week, as Rich mentioned, Mayor Garcetti announced that he has set a goal for the city to recycle 100% of the flows from Hyperion. The last point is it's simply sound business to consider any underutilized resource as a potential local water supply. Yay. Sorry, I may have gotten ahead of myself here. Sorry. So our objective, based on the known average daily flows through Hyperion, will be to serve demand south of the Santa Monica Mountains with groundwater replenished with advanced treated purified water from Hyperion. So the shaded area below represents essentially half of the city's service area. And to be clear, when we talk about a Mulholland moment or building a third aqueduct, this is what it looks like. The big takeaway from Mayor Garcetti's press conference last week is that this initiative will set us on the path towards water independence. It will not only make the city more sustainable, but by building water storage, it will also provide a hedge against future impacts from climate change and drought. At this point, I'd like to invite Diane Gatza from the Water Replenishment District to share a little bit about WRD and its role in the Central and West Coast basins. Dan?
Great. Thank you. Good morning, President Levine, Vice President McLean-Hill, members of the Commission. Thank you so much for inviting the Water Replenishment District to be here and present today. We're very excited and motivated to be a partner with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power on this program and this project moving forward. A little bit of background, WRD is the groundwater basin manager in Los Angeles County. So we have two groundwater basins, the West Coast Basin and the Central Basin. And both basins supply about 245,000 acre-feet a year of pumping to the Los Angeles area, a lot of which goes to our partners here, City of Los Angeles. So WRD is responsible for replenishing all the water that's pumped out. So out of that 245,000, WRD is responsible for finding the water to put back in. Traditionally, over the years, we have had different supplies. So there have been imported water supplies, recycled water supplies, and then stormwater supplies that have replenished the basin. More recently, WRD has implemented a Water Independence Now program. This program is to get WRD 100% off of imported water. And with the completion of our Albert Robles Center, formerly the GRIP facility in Pico Rivera, we will be now 100% reliant on locally sustainable resources for that 245,000 acre-feet a year of pumping rights, which is really exciting for our agency. Now looking forward, okay, what does WRD do next? In addition to the 245,000 acre-feet of pumping that we have in our area, we know a lot of the pumpers also take imported water as well. Well, how do we convert those imported water users to get them onto groundwater and locally sustainable sources? In 2015, there were the adjudication for the Water Replenishment District that was amended to allow for storage. There's approximately 450,000 acre-feet of storage between the two basins that WRD is responsible for. So this project that we're talking about here today would utilize the storage in the basin and overlay a lot of the City of LA's service area. So it's exciting because we're the banker in all of this. We'd be purchasing the water, have somewhere to store it, and we're excited to say that we're the only agency that has 450,000 acre-feet of demand to take the water from the City of Los Angeles. So I'll pass it back to Rafael.
Thank you, Dan. So what would maximizing recycled water from Hyperion look like? How much flow is available? How would this new water supply impact current operations, and most importantly, what will it cost? The biggest challenge will be to get the water to go, to get the water where it needs to go. As you heard from Diane, the Central and West Coast Basin, the storage available in those basins will be critical to the success of this program. With that context, let me talk a little bit about the regional program components that we've identified so far. The first is the conversion or expansion of the Hyperion treatment plant to full advanced treatment. Secondly, is a large pipeline to convey that water to the Central Basin for injection, extraction, treatment, and then conveyance into our distribution system to serve to our ratepayers. Two smaller elements that we've identified is providing replenishment water to the Water Replenishment District for remediation project of a saline plume in the South Bay, and with the potential to reclaim some of that water down in the harbor, who's currently strictly served by imported met water. And then the last component is to interconnect with the County Sanitation District's joint plant and MWD's regional water recycling project to add redundancy to the harbor recycled water system. So the first two elements are the largest. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on those, providing a little bit of detail on the scale of work that's going to have to take place in order to make that a reality. So Bureau of Sanitation will be tasked with the retrofitting or transforming of the Hyperion treatment plant. The challenge is to advance treat in excess of 200 million gallons per day. That would entail, again, I mentioned either an expansion or a retrofit of the facility to either MBR technology, reverse osmosis, advanced oxidation, and I want to show what that would look like here. Basically, you see it may involve the gutting of the facility and transforming its very DNA. LA Sanitation, in collaboration with DWP, are going to take a look at all the state-of-the-art technologies that are available to make this transformation possible and ensure that the water quality standards are met. Substantial water storage will also be required in order to equalize the variations in daily flow that you see between the middle of the day and at night. And to give a scale of this challenge, this thing is on a timer here. Sorry about that. To give a scale of the challenge, all of these retrofits would need to occur while the facility remains in operation. To me, the heart of this initiative is the conveyance to the Central Basin for replenishment of the groundwater tables. So the steps required to accomplish this are going to be, again, the full advanced treatment at Hyperion, 8-foot diameter, 15-mile pipe to convey the water to the Central Basin, series of injection well fields, extraction well fields, treatment facilities to address any contaminants that come out of the ground, and then network and conveyance pump stations and all related infrastructure to connect this water into our distribution system. This effort will obviously require significant investment from the city and our ratepayers, but more importantly, it's going to require partnerships with our neighboring agencies, including the Water Replenishment District, who manages the basin. Okay, so here's the money slide. This program cost estimate is an accumulation of the four elements that I discussed a couple of slides ago. And now the $8 billion cost is a big number, but when you consider the volume of water that we expect to generate, in addition with the life cycle costs of the investments that will go in, the cost per acre foot of the program is actually comparable to what we currently invest for recycled water projects. And furthermore, by the time that this program comes online, the expected increases or the expected cost of imported met water will be $1,825, which is about $200 more than what this program will cost. So we're currently identifying potential funding mechanisms that may include state, federal loans, grant programs, and as well as partnerships with our neighboring agencies to gauge the interest for them to invest in this and to try and leverage our dollars and hopefully benefit the region in whole.
So again, that cost could go down because that's not anticipating any subsidies from Metropolitan or any other outside funding.
Correct. Okay.
Where would Metropolitan fit into it?
So they have a local resources program that gives subsidies for projects like this, and I would say that every single one of our recycle projects to date over the last 20 years or so, the program has received those funds. So we will be making application for those funds very soon.
Okay, thank you, Rich. So the timing, how long will this take to implement this program? So we have a goal and a vision set for us by Mayor Garcetti to implement this program by 2035. So we have a whole lot of work ahead of us. The schedule is highly dependent on the regulatory framework for direct potable reuse, our ability to secure the outside funding that Rich just discussed, and as well as establishment of a collaborative framework with our neighboring agencies.
Be ready on Thanksgiving Day, 2035. We've got it.
Yes.
So finely tuned. We know exactly.
Get the turkey ready. Yeah. Okay, so LADWP undertakes many projects, large and small, all on their own. But because of the complexity, size, and scale of this initiative, this is not one of those projects. A collaborative framework that we consider is obviously our partners at LA Sanitation to begin doing the retrofits at Hyperion. And in terms of the regional partnerships, you heard the importance of WRD's role here. We'd like to coordinate closely with Metropolitan Water District's Regional Water Recycling Program down in the harbor, and then other agencies such as Long Beach, Torrance, Central Basin, and as well as any of the 26 city contract agencies that currently discharge wastewater into the city's into the Hyperion service area. We will also consider a joint powers authority with water rights holders within the basin to help fund and manage some of the regional aspects of this program. I again would like to invite Diane to speak a little bit about our partnership. Before the board today, you just approved earlier item number 18, which is an agreement for LADWP and WRD to develop a joint LA Basin replenishment and extraction master plan. Diane will explain what the joint master plan will do in order to help us achieve some of the goals that I've just discussed.
Perfect. So WRD and LADWP have been working together collaboratively with monthly working groups for the past year. When we first started with these working groups, it was like, how do we partner? How do we make this partnership move forward? We decided signing an MOU to formalize the arrangement between our two agencies to continue to work together was appropriate. So that was approved by the WRD Board of Directors and also this commission here back in September of 2018, so just a few months ago. That formalized our working relationship. Out of that and these working groups, we've decided to embark on a master plan, and this is not going to be a master plan that will sit on the shelf and we're just going to refer to in the future. It's going to be a working document that's going to be identifying 3 key things for our 2 agencies. One, what are the sources of replenishment that are available to our agencies? There's really only 2 or 3, I guess, Hyperion, the joint plant, and then the LA River. So identifying the sources. Key component number 2 is identifying how to get those sources into the ground. What types of treatment do we need? Where's the infrastructure need to go? How do we get it there? And then component number 3 is going to be how do we get this water out of the ground and what do we do with it? So where are we pulling it out? Who's taking it? How much are they taking? And what is it doing to the groundwater basin levels? So this master plan is going to look at all 3 of those components. We've recently taken the memorandum of understanding, that's item 18 in front of you today, to our board of directors, and that was approved last week on the 21st. We've hired a consultant to help us perform the study. It's a 1-year study, so it's going to be done in a very aggressive schedule. We don't want to delay on this. We want to identify all the projects and components up front, identify sort of a red, yellow, green of which projects make the most sense to continue moving forward with, pull those out. We're going to have implementation schedules, cost estimates, partnership details, everything that we need to do to continue moving these projects forward to see them through to implementation. So that'll be coming before you probably around this time of next year as well. So that's what we're hoping to get out of this master plan, and the partnership we have with LADWP will continue to meet monthly throughout the entire study. And I'm sure we'll be back here presenting the findings with you at the conclusion.
Thank you, Diane. Next steps. First and foremost, completion of the master plan that the commissioners just approved a little bit ago. We want to also continue our efforts to develop the list of projects, identify and forge the necessary partnerships, and recommend opportunities to interconnect the recycled water systems. Ultimately, we see Hyperion as part of a larger system to efficiently move recycled water throughout the region. The City of Los Angeles will be the primary beneficiary of the water produced by Hyperion, but given the complex governance structure within the 2 West Coast and Central Basins, the partnerships are critical to ensure the success of the program. And lastly, I'd like to give credit to the large team of people, both within and outside of the city family, that have gotten us to this, that have worked tirelessly to get us to this point. So this includes leadership from the mayor's office, staff, and leadership at LADWP, LA Sanitation, Water Replenishment District, and those that are from outside the city that just community at large that will be part of this process. You know, for the city of Los Angeles, this is the project of our generation. I'm very excited to be able to undertake this, and I believe that me, my staff, our team, we're all ready to undertake this challenge. So with that, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present, and I can now take questions.
So I just want to thank both Rafael and Diane, and these are not the next leaders, these are the current leaders really of their generation, and I'm excited going forward that we have just really fine people working on this project within the city and within WRD. So it's great. There's a lady sitting down in that front row in that picture that had a very poetic way of explaining the significance of last week. And Commissioner McLean Hill acknowledged that we have a great past history that we're proud of and we often refer to, but really really guided the group that was gathered there to look forward to the future of what we have to look forward in this project and within Water Resources at Water and Power. And the future is even greater than the history, I would say. And I'm really, again, excited for this project. We're going to deliver the purest of pure water to our groundwater basins. We're going to develop a regional network that will serve the entire city of Los Angeles and the surrounding cities. And really to be sustainable, not depleting that resource that right now is literally going out to the ocean, and providing a level of resiliency against prolonged periods of drought. If we lose our aqueducts in an earthquake, we'll have that reservoir of water serving us here and be able to sustain us through that point. You know, I challenged the staff a while ago because it is an audacious thing to take water from the ocean and push it back uphill. It's a complete reversal of what we do now. You know, the whole aqueduct system is amazing and it flows by gravity all the way downhill, and much of the city flows that way as well. And so we're turning that thing up on in. But I challenged them that, you know, we're the same people that built an aqueduct 300 miles away and brought it to the city of Los Angeles. So 15 miles is not that big of a deal. And if we need to, we can take it to the San Fernando Valley as well. So really a transformative project. Most of all, we're thankful for the gentleman in the middle of that picture, the mayor of Los Angeles, that has challenged us since day one of his term here. He really is a water mayor. He gets it. And he's got just great leadership for our city, and we're very appreciative to that. So any questions with that?
Very exciting. Commissioner Barad.
Can we go back to page 6, please? Okay. Number 3, potential desalter treatment plant. Can you talk about that, please?
Sure. That initiative is led by the Water Replenishment District. So Diane, would you mind?
Sure,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
So the Water Replenishment District has a program called the Regional Brackish Water Reclamation Program. We're looking to treat a 600,000 acre-foot plume that's trapped in our West Coast basin. This was due to overpumping back in the 1950s before a seawater intrusion barrier was installed. So this plume is essentially trapped there, disabling pumpers in the area from drilling wells and utilizing fresh groundwater. So we're looking at installing a 20,000 acre-foot a year desalter treatment in the area. We're partnering with LADWP as well as 6 other stakeholders that we have that are looking to take water from this project. We're currently in the middle of a feasibility study that will be concluding in the end of June of this year. And then we'll move into implementation steps, most likely CEQA permitting, piloting, and then to a design and construction, hopefully within the next 5 years.
And do you intend to go beyond that area that's on this map with desalting?
No, the desalter is going to be centralized to where the contaminant or the saline plume is located. And the saline plume is primarily located in the city of Torrance. So we'll have to site all of our wells in that location, and then we can serve the water outside of the location, but the treatment will reside there.
So this is groundwater treatment. So
Correct.
the groundwater has been contaminated by the sea going into that basin. So it's not a desal plant that you think is on the coast kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just treating that groundwater that's there, basically removing the salt. And then once the salt is removed over a period of time, then it can operate just like a freshwater groundwater basin.
So are there any plans to go, what I meant going beyond, using the ocean to,
Sure, people, we, in fact, within Marty's and my career, somewhere on some shelf, there's a desal plant somewhere out there. But when you just take a step back, and I've always explained it, you've got all this water coming down through Hyperion, it's going out in the ocean, and that project, imagine like, okay, that's happening over there, so let's take it out of the ocean here. When you ought to be looking over here and say, before it ever goes out there,
yes,
let's take care of that. So that's an ambitious enough jump to do that. And again, as Raphael said, it's a significant amount of water. We're going to be able to serve basically geographically half of the city off of that program. So to that, I would say that's enough of a step at this point, and it really will allow us with our other resources that we have to be fairly independent of variations in weather, et cetera.
To jump in on what Rick said, so, people think, well, wastewater, it's contaminated, this and that. The wastewater is actually considerably cleaner than the ocean water. And so when we looked at a plant, we looked at Scattergood, which of course would have used a Scattergood intake, which of course with once-through cooling is going out of business. So a desalination plant out of the ocean has the same intake problems that a power plant would potentially have. And that's one of the challenges that San Diego County is having with the Carlsbad plant. And so, but the technology is essentially the same. But the ocean water by Hyperion is 38 times saltier than the wastewater is. And when we're at that level of like reverse osmosis treatment, that kind of treatment, you're really dealing with salts. So this is the same treatment technology with literally a much cleaner source of water. And so it's less energy intensive and less waste and a lot easier to treat than actually desalinating the ocean would be. So even though it's kind of hard to get your head around, it's actually a far superior source of water than the ocean is. And when it's clean, it'll actually be cleaner than all the drinking water standards when it comes out of the plant.
Right. I noticed in the last week, since we've had the rains, there's been a lot of press about, where does the water go?
George Skilton yesterday. Yeah.
What?
George Skilton yesterday at the Times, right?
Yeah, and everything, goes to the ocean.
Right.
And I think that Senator Hertzberg now has a bill. How does this figure in with?
So he's working on a bill. Last year he introduced a bill about not having any discharge out of wastewater plants, and he's working on reintroducing that. And we've been asked to provide input on that. And I think he's also looking at stormwater components. Of course, Measure W and the whole issue to help capture stormwater, both for the issue of collecting water as a water supply and also reducing the pollution from runoff, is another component. So all these things go hand in hand, and really it's the wastewater that we have in our possession, getting into the ground, trying to get stormwater into the ground. When you get a whole year's supply of water fall in 1 or 2 days in a heavy rainstorm, you can't catch every bit of it. But we were looking to dramatically improve how much we catch. Rich has projects at the spreading grounds, both ours and the counties up in the San Fernando Valley, that'll double the capacity of those places to catch the water. So we will catch a lot more stormwater in the future. We won't be able to catch every drop, but what goes to the ocean will be less and will be cleaner than what it is now.
To what extent does this project link up with those efforts?
Well, go ahead.
So I'll give you an example. Well, first of all, with water conservations that have happened over the last 30 years, the capacity of these plants, there's extra capacity basically available. So already there's a possibility you could take what's called dry weather flows. Just on a day like today, there's still water going down the washes into the river, and you could take that, and there's already, I think LA Sand already does that, puts it in the wastewater treatment plants. Well, now that we'll have a project that takes water and injects it into the groundwater basin, there's now an opportunity then to capture some of that storm flow, run it through this wastewater plant, and then inject it in our groundwater basin. So we have that possibility both here in the Central Basin, and we have basically a similar project that is much further along up in the San Fernando Valley at LA Sanitation's Tillman treatment plant, where we're going to basically treat that wastewater and then spread it into the San Fernando Valley. A future project could then be to actually inject stormwater then into the same aquifer out there. So basically this unlocks the ability for us to do that.
Is new construction or anything like that necessary to capture more of it during times like the time we had in the last few weeks?
Right. You would have to install pumps to pump it out of the river, put it into the plant, and then pumps to pump it into the groundwater basin.
And is that cost effective in light of the erratic timing of this kind of deluge?
We'd have to put that into the whole equation and figure that out. But again, with this announcement, it causes us to now to think how to do that, because this is also not just converting Hyperion, but also putting in basically that infrastructure to allow that to happen.
So would that be a part of the study that you guys are talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're looking at possibility of more low flow diversions. There's a separate study going on to look at those, and those are relatively inexpensive because you just look at where your storm drains or your channels are and divert them to a sewer with available capacity, and in turn that provides additional water for recycling. And so but currently the water goes through the plant, goes out to the ocean. So if you're able to reuse it, then that can give you a more reliable supply.
Yeah, one of the things in this is just to note is that the San Fernando Valley is very different than the Central and West Coast Basin. So in the valley, you have very porous soils, particularly on the east end, and you have large areas where you can collect stormwater. You have debris basins on the hills that are operated by LA County, and so you have a whole different collection methodology and ability to get it in the ground. In this part of town, you have no spreading grounds anywhere, and so you have a lot of pavement, very little chance for infiltration. And so what's happened is that WRD has had to, inject water or get water into the ground. In the San Gabriel River area, they have more opportunities, but there's not a lot by the LA River. So in this case, if you want to take water and put it in the ground, if you're not going to spread it and have that first layer of soil kind of filter the water as it goes through, if you want to inject it, it's almost like piercing the skin with a needle. Now you're down into the groundwater basin itself. So the water has to be of superior quality going in because you're putting it more directly into the groundwater supply. So it's a very different situation than what we have for our own aquifer up in San Fernando. And it's a place that the solutions really eluded us for a long time. So this is really going to make that whole basin much more useful.
Well, I think, there's no doubt that this is a very enterprising, dynamic, and exciting time for the department and for the city of Los Angeles. I think that we're all in agreement that we really, really want to find the most creative and thoughtful means of conserving water, using renewable energy. But I would like to reiterate the request that I made at the last meeting that is reflected in the last minutes, that I do think it's kind of irresponsible to make these announcements, these promises, without providing the financial details. Very similar to Mr. Humperville's request. I think, as ratepayers, we need to know what these wonderful, wonderful endeavors are going to cost ratepayers. It wasn't just a few months ago that General Manager Wright was holding neighborhood council meetings with our ratepayer advocate because ratepayers were very upset about how high their bills have become. So it's only just to not only embrace this new technology, but to be accountable for it.
Commissioner Vasquez.
I have two questions, but before we move on to the questions, would you take me back to the picture? To the last picture, I mean. You have a lot of pictures in your presentation. I just want to say that I'm so grateful for this team because I think what you're trying to do is, I believe, is going to return into savings to customers. And every time it rains, I have endless videos of people that go out to the river and videotape the river and see the stream of water rushing nowhere. Well, rushing somewhere, to the ocean. So it's exciting to see that these efforts are coming together and that we will so represented. And this picture, what really reminds me is all of the staff here and all of the people and beyond. I think I'm missing some people in that picture that I'm kind of looking at, but I don't want to say his name, that has been also very instrumental on all of our water. I'm so grateful for Commissioner Matt Hill for being there and representing the rest of the board because this is extremely important. And it is our fiduciary duty to make sure that all of our programs are cost effective and bring back benefits to our community here in Los Angeles. So that's definitely something that is important to me. Reason why I wanted to ask you, number one, I want to learn more about how is this going to help us reduce the imports of water. As you know, there is Commissioner Noonan and I serve in the committee speaking to the folks, the tribes in the Owens Valley, and it's important for me and for them to know how this is going to help reduce the imports of water, and also how this is, I think in slide 9, you mentioned the cost, and in the light of Commissioner Nuna's comments, I would like to also know how this translates in dollar amount for for customers. So if you have those answers, quick answers, I will appreciate.
Well, we will come back on the cost to come back exactly how this is all calculated, and then what's the financial impact when it comes down to a rate as well. As to import, so we have 2 imported sources. Our purchase imported water supply through MWD, that will be drastically reduced, maybe down to as little as 10% of our supply. As to our own aqueduct supply, our long-range plans have always just assumed normal imports from the Owens Valley. So what this will do, though, is actually put less stress on that. By developing this reservoir in the Central Basin, if we have a dry year in the Owens Valley, where we used to stress out about that and maybe be having to further pump groundwater out of that basin, we won't be so driven to do so because we know we have a local supply here already. And so I envision the future that whatever's flowing down the aqueduct, it will just take whatever it is, and then we'll make it up basically on this project and similar projects like that. So it basically takes the stress off of the Owens Valley.
And when Rich says normal imports, normal now is half of historical.
Right.
So we're already cut by 50% on the aqueduct on an average. If there
Because
ever
the
such
water
thing.
coming from the aqueduct is not counted as imported water, is that correct?
Well, no, because
It's ours.
when Marty and I started our careers, I keep referring back to that as we're a long old men. My wife did say, she said, "You realize when this project is done that we're talking about, I'll be 80 years old." So hopefully I'll make it back for the ribbon cutting. But because of things like the Mono Lake decision, the long-term water agreement in the Owens Valley, Owens Lake, and then just a change in climate that's resulted in like 60,000 acre-feet less of runoff, we now export half of what we did 30 years ago. So it's already been reduced, and more water is basically staying up in the valley. And so long term, we're not looking to take any more water out of the Owens Valley.
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge that this exciting development or announcement last week and then presentation today really reflects clearly a very long-term effort and an awful lot of planning and work. And I'm delighted to see it come to fruition, at least to this point. Really pleased to see that as we look forward, we are not only looking at our own capacity, but looking at the additional leverage and capacity that we gain by entering into collaborations and regional work with other partners, and that's an exciting development. And I'm grateful for the presence of WRD, their representation here today, and also our partners at LA San. And it's I've only been on the board for just a little while, so I'm just getting used to the way that things kind of come up and represent themselves. And so I've not seen much hyperbole out of the water unit or Rich. And so I am really taken aback by the excitement that this particular effort has generated within the agency, and am extremely proud of the work that's been done, the work that's being done, and excited for the managers, those who've been around for a very long time. And it's I think just a stroke of luck that Marty is representing is acting GM today as this is being presented, given his history with water, and also excited for the new managers who have the opportunity to make their own history here at the department and within the city. This is really, it's interesting. Environmental rhetoric is really sexy, and gets lots of headlines. What's not so sexy, but what's incredibly essential, is the intricate, detailed, demanding, and extraordinary work and effort that it takes to actually figure out how to deliver. And to the extent that this department has, made that its business and its mission, that's something to be, to be celebrated on every occasion that we can. And in addition to the photo that you saw, Ara, Rich, I noted as I was leaving, made it his business to make sure that all of the members of our department that were represented that day got a photo with the mayor. And I just want to thank you for that, because we so often, celebrate the highly visible participants in these efforts, but it's those who just come to work every day and do the near impossible and make it look easy that we need to uplift more. So thank you all for being here.
And we were color coordinated. We all dressed in blue that day. I was just inspired by just the mayor's remark that he's made multiple times in his term about this being our Mulholland moment, looking towards our past and now looking towards the future. And you made those same sentiments. And I've always said, well, if this is our Mulholland moment, as Raphael said, this is our next aqueduct. So we have a code name for this project, and it's Operation Next, and it's the next big thing. Operation Next, ON. We're on to the next big thing. So we're pretty excited about it, as you can tell. Thank you.
Very well said on all parts. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Interim water and power rate review.
So back in the spring of 2016, the board and the city council approved a 5-year rate action for water and power. And in those ordinances, it required an interim rate review to be done by the department and by the Office of Public Accountability. The department has hired Navigant Consulting, and I'm going to invite Andrew Ray and his team to come up and do the department's presentation. And like I said, this is in compliance with the current ordinances. There's no actions for today, but we need to present our report, and in 2 months, the Office of Public Accountability will present their report. And prior to June 30th of this year, we will ask the board to take an action to determine whether we make any changes to the base rate revenue targets that are set in the current ordinance. So at the table today is Andrew Ray and his team. I'll allow him to introduce them and walk through the presentation.
Thank you, Ann. I'm Andrew Ray. I'm a managing director at Navigant, and I led the joint DWP and Navigant team that did the midterm rate review. With me are Christina Stanford, who managed the water elements, and Laura Vogel, who managed the power elements. We're going to walk through the presentation that you have, and you also have received, I think, the full report has been transmitted to you. So the department is in the midst of the 2016-2020 rate cycle overview. And I'll just take you back for a little bit of history, as there's some new board members who weren't here back when this was first done. Oops. So here we go. So beginning in 2015, the work was done to look at making some significant structural changes to the rates, also looking at the financial plans that were needed to get the department through the next 5-year period. That included the capital spending programs, all of the budgets. And the rate ordinances at that time were changed. As I mentioned, there were some mechanical and structural changes to the rates. And also this process was laid out in the ordinance. So in 2016, the new power and water rate ordinances went into effect. Over the next couple of years, 2017 and 18, the department monitored the new rates. It made strides on key strategic programs. We'll talk about that. And it increased the amount of reporting it did on, I believe, 57 different metrics that were new at that particular point in time to add to transparency and give more information to the board and the public. 2018, this process began, including a review of all of the department's financials, actuals, forecasted costs, and the performance of the different rate elements and mechanics that were approved previously. Year 4 is where we are now. And this is called the midterm rate review. It's not quite in the middle, it's more towards the end. So the analysis that we've done has been submitted to the board for potential action once you studied this report, and then also the report that Dr. Pickle and his team will be providing you over the next several months. In year 5 or 6, there's some flexibility, 2020 or 21, new rates will go into effect on July 1st, if there are any, and a new rate action would take place at that point in time. The interim rate review analysis has been submitted to the board and the power commissioners, and we're just going to talk about some of the key findings today. So one of the key things that the rate ordinance did was it laid out the process and the timeline, and it was the first step in beginning regular rate processes and regular rate reviews. Before then, rate increases were highly sporadic, rate actions were highly sporadic, and this was a time in conjunction with the ratepayer advocate to really move more to sort of industry standards, regular rate cycles with regular reviews, so that if there are rate changes, they're spread out on a more regular basis, not irregularly. The rate structure changes, one of the key elements we're going to talk about today, in 2016, decoupling was established. This enables the department to recover costs and protect customers from over or under payments using a mechanism called the Base Rate Revenue Target, the BRRT. By ordinance, the department can increase or decrease the BRRT by up to 2% during the interim rate review. So -2 to +2, anywhere within that, the board has the ability to change the base rate revenue target forecast without going through a full rate process, without going through the city council process. It was approved in 2016. Rate changes, so we initiated a forecasted average annual rate increase of 3.9% for power and 5.3% for water over the 5-year period. And we'll look at how that forecast and actuals have actually compared in just a few minutes. So decoupling was one of the most important actions that was taken in 2016. Thanks, Laura. And what decoupling really does is it looks at the targeted sales. So for both water and power, what was the forecasted revenues based on how much water or power was going to be used? And it says it allows the department, if the department over forecasted, so if conservation kicked in, which is what really happened in this case for both water and power, it makes sure that the department is fiscally sound. So in other words, there's a fixed amount of money that's needed to run the department, and decoupling makes sure that the department is protected from financial highs and lows. If the department under forecast and consumers used more, then ratepayers would get refunds. In this particular case, the department has under collected because the forecast was much higher than actual. So you'll see the rate impact of decoupling as we go through the slides.
So just to clarify, if we're returning funds to customers, is there a line item stating that there's been a reimbursement?
So in this particular case, you're not returning funds because of the way the forecasting mechanism works. So in the financial plans, the impact of decoupling is shown. So if the department has over forecast and under collected, in other words, actual sales were less than the forecast, then that's going to result in an increase in the pass-through rates. Likewise, if it goes in the opposite direction, then it would be a return to customers. But in this particular case, there's an under collection, so rates are actually going up in this period.
Okay, but there is detailed financial history that we've done this, and we can provide that information to customers?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's updated quarterly. So each quarter, each of the pass-throughs is looked at, or over, under collected, and it can be adjusted on a regular basis.
And biannually for water.
Yeah, biannually for water.
Thanks. By what?
Biannually for water, quarterly for power.
So the primary focus of the interim rate review is to really assess how accurate were those forecasts from the 2016 rate action against the actual conditions, and to update a new forward 5-year financial plan going forward from this point in time to include forecasts for the remaining 2 years of the rate action. And the financial plan is a snapshot at this point in time. So major programs such as the one that you just heard about, the Hyperion treatment plant, whatever changes happened with the once-through cooling plants, because those are not fully understood yet, those aren't in the financial plan. So financial plans would be updated as those programs get your approval or city council approval. So this is based on what's known and certain at this point in time.
So, I mean, wouldn't it be sensible to at least figure an estimate of the cost? That way we can, you know, at least communicate, you know, the good and the bad to our ratepayers. You know, this is very exciting, but the estimate's going to be that your bill's going to go up by this much, or not.
Or not, right.
There's going to be an initial investment.
Yeah.
I'm sure that long-term, not just financially, but environmentally, it'll be a windfall for Los Angeles. But we do need to educate people as to, you know, if their bills are going to go up. And I think using an estimate really seems like a sound practice to me.
So for once through cooling, the old program of repowering the plant, so those costs are in the 5-year financial plan. Because there's so much variability around the options, you know, the department hasn't fully, and the costs, you know, need to be studied carefully. There's a lot of new technology and new options. So we don't have a good estimate. But the department's working on that. They update the financial plans on a regular basis. There may be some updates related to those programs by the time this is actually before you to take action, which would be in May. So the plans could be updated by that point in time. So we assessed forecast versus actual, as I mentioned. So we've reviewed all of the expenditures, consumption, and financial metrics and forecasts, and we've analyzed the rate changes and bill impacts of those. The Financial Services Group has prepared a new updated 5-year financial plan and has taken the feedback from the past several years and changed those forecasts. The new forecasts have lower consumption to reflect what's actually happening with both energy efficiency and water conservation. We've modeled the base rate revenue target changes based on what is allowed in the ordinance. So what you'll see today, we've looked at the range that was permitted without any further council action. So from -2 to +2, we've looked at those scenarios. If the board or the department decided to do something outside of that range, obviously that can be modeled, but that would require a full rate action.
Just a quick question. Is the primary variable in terms of the forecast misses related to conservation, or are there other things?
The biggest driver for the changes in the forecast is greater than anticipated both energy conservation and water conservation, yes. So the programs are working better than expected, which is good news.
Yes.
And the decoupling mechanism is actually working exactly as it was intended to do as well.
Intended to do,
yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
And then the last part is to look at both historical and forward-looking data to determine the next steps for this rate cycle and the timing of any future rate actions. The really key purpose is for the department's management and this board to focus on whether or not the department needs to adjust the base rate revenue target based on the actual and updated forecasts. Very quickly, because you're really familiar with what the key achievements have been since 2016 for both power and water. On the power side, energy efficiency achieved 445.6 gigawatts of energy efficiency savings since 2010. And this is equivalent to what it would take to power roughly 74,000 homes, or removing almost 119 million pounds of CO2 from the atmosphere. So, really significant advances in energy efficiency. Solar program successes, including the Solar Rooftops program in 2017 and the Shared Solar program that was done late last year in 2018. To increase solar equity by providing opportunities for all DWP customers to benefit from solar. Power system reliability ensured power system reliability exceeded the nationwide averages with 0.93 outages per year and 150 minutes of downtime versus 1.3 outages and 250 minutes nationwide. Achieved legislative goal of 25% renewable energy by 2016. And 30% in 2017, and the department is on track to achieve the next goal of 33% by 2020. You're familiar with the study on once through cooling. and all of the options that came up, and there's now significant new work being done on that to meet some of the challenges that the mayor has put before the department. On water, the department replaced approximately 559,000 feet of distribution mainline, meeting or exceeding the goals in the first 3 years of the rate cycle. It surpassed the Sustainability Plan LA goal of 20% reduction in gallons per capita from 2014 usage by January 1st, 2017. It partnered with the mayor's office to launch the Save the Drop campaign in 2016 and completed the home water report pilot in 2017 to encourage customers to conserve water. And it began construction on the North Hollywood West groundwater remediation facility in September of 2017 and is approximately 50% complete. This facility is the first step towards remediation of the San Fernando groundwater basin and is scheduled to go online at the end of this year.
Do you mind just going back to the power achievements for just one moment?
Sure.
Were there any, my recollection was one of the principal reasons for the rate increase in both water and power were infrastructure improvements. Where is that shown in the power achievements?
So the power system reliability is probably the most direct way of measuring that. So as I'll cover in a minute when we talk about the capital spending, the vast majority of power capital expenditures were spent on system reliability and infrastructure, and that directly led to the increased performance, particularly during the heat storms. There was a presentation before you, I believe late last year, that Mr. Adams gave that showed how the department had moved money from some of the other programs to really deal with how it responded to heat storms on a much more dynamic basis. And some of these results are a direct result of how the department spent that money.
I think if you could include more specifics on the infrastructure component, it would be useful.
Okay. So expenditures since 2016, so this is to reinforce what we were just talking about. So power capital spending was $3.5 billion. And what this chart shows you is, so where did that money go? And if you look at the two bottom, you'll see elements, infrastructure and reliability. You'll see that almost 61% of the money was spent on those two elements in power. So directly to your point.
I'd just like a breakdown a little bit.
Yep, we can provide that. And that's also true on the water side. Water quality and infrastructure, again, are 61%. There's symmetry between water and power in that particular case. And I think that really shows in the metrics that the department has achieved in reliability on both the water and the power side. So conservation and consumption. Energy and water conservation programs are a success story for the department, since conservation was and remains a key strategic objective for the city and the department, and it significantly exceeded what it forecast in the 2016 rate action. So the charts on page 9 show you for both power and water. The 2016 sales forecast is in green, and actuals are in blue. And then you can see in both cases there's population growth. So the energy savings and the water savings exceeded all of the department's goals. The result of that, though, is it has put upward pressure on rates. So the more people conserve, getting the forecast and the actual revenue collected in balance is what decoupling is doing. The department is sort of learning in real time, and so in the new financial plan, both the power and the water forecast for consumption are down, right? So the impact of decoupling, assuming there's a certain baseline for energy conservation and water conservation, so that impact of decoupling should be mitigated in the upcoming years. It will keep going, but it shouldn't be as dramatic as it was in this last rate action. So slide 10 really shows you the rate impacts as consumption has gone down and the department has to cover its fixed costs, each KWH and HCF increases as consumption decreases, resulting in higher than forecasted rates. And so, again, the forecast from 2016 is in black, and the actuals are in green on these charts. And you'll see in each case, the rates are a bit higher because consumption was higher than forecast in both sides.
I think this is a very, very important topic that we really need to address with the public. So when the mayor's office really put onus on our department to Angelenos to conserve water, we were so amazed, we were so proud by how Angelenos really stepped up to the task. We conserved so much water, and then what I heard as a commissioner was that everyone was upset because their water bill hadn't gone down. And so I think it's really important to be very, very open and offer an educational forum to Angelenos, because they feel, you know, I've done my share, but why hasn't my water bill gone down? And this ties into exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so in the report and in the board letter, we talk a little bit about, so yes, rates have absolutely gone up, and they've gone up, not a trivial amount. But the more that you conserve, the actual impact on your bill is significantly mitigated. And what we found are customers in the sort of lowest 25% of usage, their bills are actually lower than they were in 2016. The highest use customers, their bills have gone up, not as much as they would have if they've conserved a little bit. So there's a direct relationship between what your bill amount is and how eagerly you embrace conservation. So the more you conserve, the closer you get to sort of where your bill was before, or in some cases lower. But I think I absolutely agree. It's the most difficult thing to sort of logically get your head around. Oh, I'm using less, but my bill's going up. Why is that happening? And so I think as part of this midterm rate review, the department's got some, I think, really good educational materials about how conservation affects your rates and things that you can do to really sort of minimize the net impact, conserve more, save more. But yeah, we agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very well versed on the different tiers of rates given water consumption, but I do think that this is a very important talking point that the public in general doesn't understand, and they don't feel it's fair. So I think
we agree.
really we owe it to the ratepayers to elaborate on how this works.
Yep, it's been I think one of the most frequent and detailed conversations that the DWP rates team, the RPA, and we've had. How do you get people to really understand how this works?
Right. And in your assessment as an expert, do you think that even if we continue conserving more, even if we were to do all of the things that we can to keep the rates at a competitive price rate, can you foresee that the rates are generally going up on a basic economic, notion?
So I think in the near term, or the medium term, rates are likely to go up because of the types of programs that the department is doing. Mm-hmm. So, repowering an entire system to, move away from fossil fuels and to be really one of the leading enterprises in the United States in terms of its percentage of renewable portfolio is not a simple undertaking or an inexpensive one. Things like what you just heard about, the groundwater treatment plant at Hyperion, that type of modernization of the department's plant and that type of moving to, really sort of state-of-the-art facilities isn't cheap. Mm-hmm. So will there continue to be upward pressure on rates? I suspect so.
And even if we were not doing any of those, even if things were just like they have been, would the rates will still go up at some point or somehow?
So there's a built-in mechanism in the rates to have rates increase at least by inflation, right?
Right.
So if inflation runs somewhere between 2% and 3% a year, you could expect that rates would go up, by 2 or 3% per year.
So what I hear you say is despite everything, if we will keep everything going the same way as is, the rates are going to go up.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a complicated question, but I think generally there is not there's way more pressure to have them increase than there is forces that will make them go down. Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the points that you made with respect to rates is it's not just the absolute rate, but it's what the customer is paying. And so the absolute rate can be higher, but the customer's bill, depending on how they utilize the resource, could be the same or lower. And frankly, we've had a number of presentations on these issues, and what I think I recall is that the majority, we've got a pretty significant number of customers who aren't seeing any absolute increases on their bill. Their individual unit rate may be higher, but their absolute increase in terms of what they're paying is not. There is that category of customer that is typically not as aggressive about conservation as some others.
Right.
That are bearing the brunt of both higher rates and therefore higher bills associated with that. I think it's important, though, that we really approach these issues not based on anecdotes, because frankly, I don't have any customers talking to me about their rates. So some people have customers that are talking to them about their rates. I don't have any. I don't think that either my personal experience or other commissioners' personal experiences form a good basis for having this kind of conversation. But I do think that what is critical as we continue to move forward, given that we are not turning back our embrace of conservation and other forward-thinking initiatives to preserve resources and to achieve sustainability, is that we do begin to think about our value proposition beyond merely the delivery of the resource. So, there's a lot to unpack in connection with all of this, but I just think it's critical that we not become too granular as it relates to the unit price, and really look at it more from how it impacts actual customers. And when you look at it from that prism, unless I misunderstood previous presentations, we are not, customers are not en masse suffering from sticker shock with respect to their bills. Am I correct about that?
Varies slightly between power and water. It's very true for power customers. There's been, people have really embraced energy efficiency. There's also a lot of technology that can be applied. And so a significant number of customers are seeing their bills either be roughly the same despite the rate increases or lower.
Yeah, I think what the presentation that you made was relative to power. So is it different in water?
So the savings are there. They don't appear to be quite at the same magnitude level. And that's partly because there's so much technology in terms of smart homes and electric vehicles and solar rooftop that's being thrown at the power side. So there's more tools for consumers to use and embrace, but water is catching up, and so we expect to see more in that case. One thing on this point, over the next year, the department is developing a whole new class of rates. So these are very sort of traditional utility rates, but the department's working on new electric vehicle rates, expanding the solar program, demand response rates, time of use metering, all of those sort of things. As those things happen, consumers will have more and more choices, so they can manage how their bills sort of segment out and how they can generate power and sell it back into the system and all those sort of things. So there are lots of things, to your point, that I think will mitigate the impacts of rates and give consumers more and more choices in terms of how they manage their own electric use or their own water use. And so I think the department's embarking on a whole sort of class of what you could have called a few years ago future rates. Now it's sort of like modern times rates, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a comment and a question for you. I would find it helpful also if you would include some details in the infrastructure for water. Because when we proposed the rate increase, it was kind of on the heels of the UCLA, the pipe bursting, the trunk, And we've had more, pipes bursting, and we keep saying that they're very old, they're 90, 100 years old. So I think if you could include some of that in the infrastructure for the water, I think that would be very helpful. That's what they're paying for.
Yeah, I think certainly we can expand it in the PowerPoint. We do break it out in the full report. We give a fairly detailed analysis of how the department spent its capital on what key programs. And you're right, there was a significant amount of money allocated to mainline replacement and modernizing the system and all of those sort of things. And so we've looked at, of the money that was allocated, how much has been spent, how much will be spent in the next 2 years. And so we'll make sure that we put more of those details into this into the PowerPoint as well.
Thank you.
So bills remain competitive. So one of the points that was raised by the commissioners a moment ago was remaining competitive with your peers. And so despite the increased rates for both water and power, the department's bills do remain competitive with peers, especially if you look at similarly situated peers. So if you compare DWP to sort of size in urban environments such as Edison, PG&E, and San Diego, on the power side, DWP still has the lowest total residential bill. Obviously, some of the smaller utilities, Burbank, Riverside, and Sacramento, which is a good side, are somewhat lower. But the department is sort of maintaining where it was in 2016, despite the rate increases. And that's because other utilities face similar challenges. Many of the pressures that the department faces, the other utilities face as well. On water, if you look at the department against the SFPUC, which is the large water company serving San Francisco, San Diego, and San Jose, which are some of the largest ones, the department remains slightly lower. There's a large number of small peers in here, and so it's not really an apples to apples comparison. But the department is roughly in the same place on water as it was as well. So it's sort of holding its own despite the rate increases. So what were some of the key findings in the interim rate action? So on expenditures, the department, because of decoupling, because of the new rates that were put in place, and the way the forecasts and the rates all work together, was able to recover the program costs. It did underspend on some capital programs, and I think you're probably familiar for both power and water with some of the issues around procurement and other things. And also there were some changes in strategy that drove some of the underspending. On the water side, changes in the groundwater recovery. On the power side, the whole OTC repowering issue, and some of the procurement issues related to pole replacements impacted the underspending. But what the department did, and I think the presentation that Marty gave last year, it very efficiently spent money where it could. So one of the reasons why performance improved so much and the heat storms and all of that was because the department shifted money to make sure it could address those issues. So while it was underspent, it did a really effective job, we think, of shifting money from one program to another to make sure it could do as much as possible. A series of financial metrics have been approved by this board that deal with capitalization ratios and the amount of debt for both the power and the water system. The department aligned closely with the board-approved metrics for power, and it aligned closely with the board-approved metrics for water. There's some slight variations, but it was pretty close to what was anticipated. On consumption and rates, average annual rate increases were less than forecast in the rate action, 3% versus 4% for power over the last 3 years, and higher on the water side, 9.2% versus 4.9% over the last 3 years. And rates have increased due to a decrease in consumption, as we talked about. In the report, we talk about the 5-year totals, so that information is in there. And to be frank, on the power side, over a 5-year period, if the rates are totaled up, it's about a 24% rate increase and about 35% on the water side during that period. The rate structure defined in 2016 allowed the department to recover costs, meet its financial metrics, and encourage conservation. So, as I mentioned, we modeled scenarios that fit within what was allowed by the 2016 rate action. So we modeled 3 scenarios. Scenario A is no change in the base rate revenue target. So other than updating the financial plan, the base rate revenue target remains as it was predicted in 2016. Option B is a decrease in the base rate revenue target, and option C is a 2% increase. Based on the information available to us at this point in time, we believe that choosing option A is the simplest path and fits with the interim rate, with the intent of the original interim rate review, which was really to sort of do a midterm check-in and say, are we directionally moving in the right direction? Do we need to radically change this up or down, or are we within a band moving as expected?
A for both water and power?
Yes, for both water and power. And you raise an excellent point. You can do different things for water and power.
Right.
You could choose to hold one constant and move the other one up or down. So that you don't have to treat them both the same.
How does proposal A for water and power compare to how we've increased our rates in the past during the past 20 years, let's say?
So it's a tough question because if we go back 10 years, you had a long period where you had no rate actions, right? Where for a variety of reasons, the department wasn't able to raise rates. And during that period, debt levels increased significantly. So rates remained artificially low. In the last 10 years, there's been sort of a catch-up. So rates have increased at a fairly good clip to really allow the department to sort of get back in balance and to modernize the rates to protect the department from things it can't control, such as dramatic increases in the price of fuels or weather or dramatic changes in consumption. I believe, and we can give you a more detailed, but I believe that the current trend is lower than what you anticipated sort of in the 2016 period and then the ECAF adjustments before. So I think they're moderating because you're catching up. But depending on what happens with the capital programs, that trajectory can change. But we'll give you if you want, we'll give you a 20-year view.
That'd be great.
Okay, we're happy to do that.
Along those lines, we didn't have I know there's not a water rate increase for about 11 years before this one, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Why do we need to?
Yeah, and I think part of what the 2016 rate action really tried to do, and I know Dr. Pickle will talk about this, is to not have those sort of 11-year periods where you don't review the financial plans, you don't see what the department's needs are. Because if you wait 11 years or 15 years, the rate shock is significant.
Oh, yeah.
So the 2016 rate action really envisioned the beginning of a regular rate cycle where you'd get a regular cost of service study, you'd get a look at, are we where we need to be or what do we need to adjust?
I just have I'm sorry, I just want to move
Sure.
back really quickly to the slide where you indicated that we were underspent on capital programs. And could you just give me just a relative order of magnitude? And I know it's in your report, but
Yeah. I'll let Laura answer that for power and Christine answer that for water.
I'm sort of interested in order of magnitude, and also I assume that those programs are moving forward, so I'm just curious as to the impact of that particular metric.
Laura?
On the power side, I can look for the order of magnitude. The programs in repowering was probably a little less than half, but that's on hold, in a lot of ways for the reevaluating the strategy. Otherwise, it was mostly RPS, and that's probably by a third of what was forecasted, and that's largely because power purchase agreements are kind of the direction that the department has gone rather than building renewable projects. And costs for both PPAs and projects have gone down based on technology advancements. Those are the main areas for power.
And on the water side?
For water, recycled water was one of the biggest programs that underspent. They're reevaluating their recycled water strategy. So they only spent about half of their budget for that. Owens Valley also underspent because they're reevaluating the program. And then water quality and water infrastructure also underspent due to procurement delays and project extensions.
Okay, thank you.
And just one item, some of the items that they discussed are pass-throughs. So to the extent we underspent, we adjust the power pass-throughs quarterly and water annually. The reliability ones we do annually. We reduce the estimates on how that's going to be spent. So if we know that the programs aren't going to move forward, then we can adjust that in the rates. On the base rate ones, if we underspent, then we borrow less debt. So if we've collected that money from the customers and didn't have the program to spend it on, we'll reduce the debt going forward so that the customer still has value in the money that we've collected.
Thank you.
So the chart on slide 13 shows the impact of each of the options in terms of what the early rate increases are. So the final 2 years of this rate action, 18, 19, 19, 20, if you move forward with option A, it would be approximately 8.7% increase in the final 2 years, and then it goes down slightly in the next 3 years, 5.1%. That also assumes that there would be actually a full rate action in that next 3-year period, just so that you know. You pass all the metrics with option A. Option B, which is a decrease, so in the final 2-year period, rates go down slightly from option A to 8.4%. But in the next 3 years, rates would go up at a higher rate, and in the full rate action, you could anticipate that rates would go up more. So it's sort of, I can pay a little bit more now and have rates be mitigated in the future, or I can pay a little bit less now and have rates go up at a higher rate. In option B, in the final 2 years, you do fail the debt service coverage ratio. So that would either require a board action or some other adjustment to make that happen. In option C, the increase is the highest, but the impact in the next few years, the rates go up at a much lower rate, 4.5%. You do pass all of the metrics easily. So that's on power. On water, you can see the impacts are relatively the same. It's really a matter of, increase now, pay less later, or the opposite in any of the scenarios. But with water, you do pass all of the financial metrics under any of the scenarios. And in all honesty, the difference between any of the 3 scenarios in terms of the rate percentages and the impact on a customer's bills, very slight. That 2% band, adjusting that forecast, doesn't move rates up in any direction too high or down. It's really the pass-throughs and the impact of consumption that really are driving the rate increases.
Would increasing the rates for water, would that help us with our capital projects such as Hyperion?
So what it would give you is some additional headroom so that, let's say the Hyperion costs that come before you in a year or two are greater than what you might have anticipated. So getting a little extra headroom in the forecast now would mitigate the rate impact in future years. So it very much has that. And you could apply the same thing on the power side to the once-through cooling strategy and say, if I'm anticipating that there's going to be significant costs, I might want to create a little bit of headroom now to make the rate increases in the future not as high as they might otherwise have been. So it is very much a choice for you to make of, a little bit more now and prevention and, possibly curbing higher rate increases in the future.
There always are contingencies in all the the projects and the contracts that we look at. So maybe I'm wondering if we should just take that into consideration, that it's always going to be, it's like when you remodel your house, it's always more than they say.
Right. I'll defer to the department on the contingency planning.
But just to be clear, so that I feel I understand, the proposed rates for option A, they do not include estimates for Hyperion or the power projects that we discussed. And these are big expenditures. So these rates, forget about contingency. I mean, these rates may have to go drastically up given the investments that we're going to have to make within the next few years.
So within the time frame that's before you right now, so it is unlikely that the really significant ramp up of the OTC costs will be in this time horizon, but they're right outside of this time horizon. So if you're doing a full rate action in 2020 or 2021, you'll have those numbers and those plans, and it will be part of your considerations. It's unlikely that either Hyperion or the new OTC strategy will be fully implemented in the next 3 years. Certainly there could be some expenditures, and I do believe both the power and the water system have placeholder amounts, but they don't cover the full cost.
Yeah, I think as long as we can contemplate what our immediate investments will entail for those projects, I think we really need, if we can secure a proper estimate, I really do believe that those should be included in the proposal that you've outlined for the next 3 years. I understand it's not going to cover the full costs, and I understand the long-term benefits of how the ingenuity and the forward thinking that this department and our city is taking about the environment. At the same token, I think it's very, very important for us to be as transparent as possible so there are no surprises.
So we'll work with Ann's team.
We'll work with Water and Power, but I think both sections have said that it's like a year-long study to do OTC and Hyperion. So for the next budget cycle, I don't think we'll have any dollars in the, for those amounts.
Right.
But I know it's something that everybody's working on.
And that's one of the reasons, so recycled water is lower than planned because they've taken a different direction to make better, broader use of it. So what would have been project money is now going to be part of the studies and engineering that Rich is doing. Same thing on the ones through cooling. Instead of putting money in physically into Scattergood, we're now putting money into the studies, which is significantly less. They will result in other projects, but that's pushed down the road. So it's in your budget cycle, you have a view of a certain number of years. Same with the rates, a certain number of years. We know this is hanging out there, and we have to be aware of what's coming up. But that's why it doesn't show up with this, and that's why those areas will be particularly underspent because of the change in direction.
I understand. Thank you.
So moving on to slide 15. So actual, excuse me, 14, I skipped 14. Yes. So the 2016-20 rate cycle bill impacts. So this is a picture if your consumption did not change at all. So it goes to if I used exactly the same amount of power and water that I used in 2016, with the impact of the rate increases, my bill has gone up. And we'll show you in a moment what it looks like based on actual customer behavior. But the original 2016 forecast is in gray at the bottom. And you can see for low use, both power and water, medium use and high use, what the forecasted amounts were. The green arrow pointing at the after the rate action shows you that in all cases, if you use the same, your bill's gone up. Rates have gone up, and if your consumptions didn't change, your bill would go up.
And this is your bill in fiscal year 1920, at the end of the rate action.
Right. Thank you. So we took a snapshot of power based on actual consumption data from 2014, 15, and 17 and 18, looking at the 25th, 50th, and 70th percentile of residential customers. And here that you can see in 2014 and 15, For the lower end, the 25% at the lower end of consumption, their monthly usage was approximately 338. In 2017 and 18, that went down significantly to 257. Their bill has actually decreased over this period from about $41 to about $35.50. As you move up the consumption usage, you'll see that if you use 609 in 2014-15, you paid approximately $82.11. If the actual consumption now in 17-18 is $557 for that class, their bills roughly stayed the same. So even though the rates increased, their net bill amount is approximately the same. And if you're a high user, your bill's gone up slightly. Not as much as it would have, but it's gone up. So what comes next in this cycle? So today, the transmittal of the report to you and this presentation marks the beginning of the RPA's process, and I know Dr. Pickle is going to talk about that. He has, in the ordinance, a set amount of time from the time he receives the report to when he presents his findings to you, which would be sometime at the end of April. And he'll talk about that, so I won't. While Dr. Pickle is studying, the department is going to engage in a very active outreach program with all of the critical stakeholders, the neighborhood councils, all of the various organizations that have a say in this, as well as doing consumer meetings, business and commercial meetings, and also making sure everyone in the city family knows what's going on in this particular action. In April, Dr. Pickle will submit his report to the board. Any updates that the department feels are necessary would happen in that April or May timeframe. So this report could be updated to reflect what Dr. Pickle has found or new information. Between April and June, you'll consider whatever actions that you're going to take. Outreach continues along in all of those things. In June, if there are any updates to either the forecast or anything else, they have to go into effect by June 30th so they can be effective so that rates or the forecasts can take an impact in January. 2020 or 2021 is when the next full rate action will begin. That will have a new cost of service study that will look at all the department's costs. It will recommend, whatever structural changes are needed and changes in the ordinance at that point in time. As I mentioned earlier, based on the information available at this point in time, we believe that choosing option A is the simplest path and does fit with the intent of the interim rate review. But it depends what you're trying to solve for, right? If you are trying to solve for minimizing future rate impacts, you might decide to raise the forecast now. If you're really trying to hold the line as much as possible or even decrease rates, you might do that. So it really is a matter of what the board and management are trying to solve for. We do believe that, consistent with the ratepayer advocates' recommendations, that establishing a regular rate cycle by ordinance is something that this board and the department should begin to work on so that it could be part of the full rate action. One of the items that the 2016 rate action considered was making that the board had the ability to recommend changes for things that were materially misaligned in the 2016 rate ordinance. In our report, we highlight a couple of those. The most significant one is really a limiter on the department's ability to adjust rate forecasts by the impact of inflation. And there's a mechanism in there that basically functions as a productivity factor. And so let's say that inflation goes up 2%. This productivity factor is 2%, and the way the ordinance is written, you automatically subtract the productivity factor from the rate of inflation. And if you looked at a period going back about 10 years, if that had been in effect, the department would have never been able to recover the impact of inflation. So we believe that's not in the department's interest or the city's interest, and that as you move through the 2020, 2021 rate action, removing that language from the ordinance. You could replace it with one, that sort of allows some productivity gains, but doesn't completely wipe out the benefits of inflation. So we think that's something that the board should consider. And there are, right now the department tracks 57 rate metrics, and the rate metrics were new in 2016. Together with Dr. Pickle, we helped propose those. And we might have been overzealous in having so many, and not all of them necessarily are really useful for the public or the department in managing its activities or the board. So some deletion of some, replacement with new ones that make more sense. The department's commitment is it won't remove any metrics that it's not meeting. So this isn't an exercise in, oh, we're not doing well, let's get rid of it. So if the department's performance is below the metric, it will stay until it comes up. So this is really a reshuffling to get more value out of the metrics.
I'd like to get more information about the 57 rate metrics that we are following and which ones you propose eliminating and what you propose replacing them by.
Okay, so we have that in the report, but we'll take that out and get that to you.
And in the topic of metrics, did you also include the equity metrics on these 57 metrics? I believe they're
additional.
They're additional. They're additional.
But are they?
So we're not recommending any changes to the equity metrics at this point in time.
Thank you.
And that's the presentation.
Very comprehensive. Thank you. Questions? Further questions? Further comments? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can I offer one comment?
No.
At the risk of extending it.
Thank you, and very well done.
So I'll let Ann help me out, but when you look at this, of course, the whole reason for the decoupling is that we brought to the board a budget saying here's the work that we need to do, and included infrastructure improvements and that sorts of thing. So really, when you look at the rates and talk about the bill impact, the rates are a fallout of what work we want to do divided by how many units of water and power we expect to sell. So that's the basic rate. Then it's a matter of how you divide that up. That gave us the different tiers. And for the tiers, we did a cost of service study, because under Prop 26 and 218, we have to apportion the fees based on who's causing us to spend more. And so to the extent that you're able to conserve, then when we conserve water, Rich buys less water, which is the most expensive water is what he buys. And so that directly affects pass-through charge on that, and that affects how much you pay in a certain water tier. Same kind of thing on power, buying fuel and that sorts of things. So there's a certain amount of money we need to operate and to accomplish our goals. And then beyond that, there's a certain amount that customer behavior pushes that amount of money higher as we have to purchase water, purchase more power, and things like that. But ultimately, the goal is to accomplish that body of work that we think is necessary, and then fairly apportion the rates to the users. Ideally, we need that block of money, and hopefully that sets a bill standard, and you can work your own bill by how much you can save versus how much that rate has to change. But the rate is somewhat less material than the total bill that you get, and to try to control that proportion of accomplishing our overall goal for water and power.
Think we can overturn those initiatives?
I think we need those initiatives. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wait, hold on a minute.
Oh,
Don't go away.
sorry.
We have a short discussion on what we're planning to do as part of our review, so you understand the timeline. Today's February 26th. DWP has submitted their review. First question, is it complete? We're short on a few components that would allow us to fully evaluate the rates. We expect that data is readily available because the numbers appear to have been used in the analysis that Navigant prepared. Assuming we're able to get that promptly by the end of April, we would be able to issue our review of the interim rate proposal. And this was embodied in the last 2016 ordinance changes. This, as Mr. Ray noted, allows DWP to act by July 1. And this is the first time a rate change has been delegated by ordinance to the board. The council retains the right to 245 the board action and take this over, but hopefully that won't occur. The questions we see as principal in this review is looking back at the budgets that were proposed in 2016, which were the basis for the rates and the basis for the base rate revenue target. The base rate revenue target changes by year, by fiscal year. So there's one for 17-18 that's now history. There's one for 18-19 and 19-20 that is in front of this, so which may be adjusted upward or downward. Those numbers do change by year. Generally, they're going up by year. So we have the ability to adjust plus or minus 2% in that range. So as we go through and think this through, we're going to look at, are the budgets going forward adequate for the goals DWP has? Can DWP execute these budgets? Are the resulting rates reasonable? Are the pass-throughs working as intended? And what are bill and rate impacts? In this presentation, we discussed mostly bill impacts, but there's no average customer at DWP. There are 3 water climate zones, there are 2 power climate zones, there are multiple tiers. So what we would like to do is be able to spell out the rates by customer usage and by climate area in terms of the impacts. So customers understand individually what their rate impacts might be. What can be changed under the interim rules in the 2016 ordinance? The DWP board can only increase or decrease the base rate revenue targets. Changes that are outside this range require an ordinance action or change now or later. What's not in the interim rate review? If there's no full rate review before 2020, base rate adjustment charges after 2020 are limited to the inflation minus 2% that Mr. Ray talked about. No changes are intended in the rate structures in this interim review. We're operating within the form of the existing rates that are based on a cost of service study that was done prior to the start of the 16 rate review. If we want to do special rates, for example, for electric vehicles, that could be done outside this process as a special purpose rate ordinance, as was done for the marine rates for the Port of LA, for example. Metrics changes are already handled through a separate process through this board once a year. So we can handle that. That's really an action that's separate and apart from the interim rate review.
Do you intend to factor in anticipated impacts of OTC and Hyperion in your analysis?
As far as I understand, there were no major capital or operating expenses in the 2016 rate that anticipated major expenses for Hyperion. Is that correct? There were expenses of the range of, $100 million a year, but I have to go back and verify that, for once-through cooling in the later years of the 16 review, so in this period. I may be off on those numbers. Some of them are operating, some of them are capital expenses, but mostly capital expenses. For the moment, those are being deferred until we figure out how we act going forward.
And so outside the time frame we're talking about?
We may not. We have some in this period. We may want to talk about discussions on the plus or minus, how we might modify the plus or minus 2% because of that. But after this time period, we'll be spending more, maybe. We're still digesting some of the once-through cooling numbers, and we'll have information for you shortly on what we know out of the once-through cooling study, but we still think there's work to be done for the once-through cooling study to be fully comprehensive.
And thanks. Dr. Pickle indicated, so the full rate action in 2020 or 2021 would definitely cover those items. And you'll get, so work's already underway on a new cost of service study, which I believe will be completed this summer, which is the precursor to that rate action. So the department's cost of service will be updated. And that's always a backward-looking process to make sure that rates are aligned. But there'll certainly be an opportunity in that process to look at the impacts of Hyperion, other things like Hyperion and once-through cooling.
Thanks. Thank you again.
Yeah, I want to thank you as well for this presentation. I think it's so important that we communicate in the most transparent manner possible. You know, I have housekeepers telling me DWP is one of my most expensive costs for my living expenses. How can this be? So from housekeepers to affluent business people coming to me to complain about rate increases, I think we really need to applaud what our city is envisioning in terms of being, you know, right on the cusp of doing great things for the city. At the same token, we really need to prepare people about what these investments are going to cost. You know, I have no doubt they're going to benefit us in the long run. At the same token, you know, how do I explain to you know, a woman who's one of her biggest expenses is her water and power bill, and how that's going to go up for her. So I just think we have to be as responsible and transparent as possible. And I thank you for this presentation. It was very helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
They importantly included some information on rates for lower income in the electric discussion that I think was very useful. That would have to be handled outside this interim rate increase or changes. We would assume that would be part of the next full rate review. Appropriate changes, those changes affect many rate categories, so I think it's important that be carefully considered. But we encourage it moving ahead.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more management report, and then we get to the open agenda, and then we get to the closed session. 8C, reauthorization of the Customer Bill of Rights, and this will link up to item 22 on the agenda.
I was going to say good morning, Commissioners, but I'm going to say good afternoon, Commissioners.
It was good morning when you were going to say it.
So good afternoon. I'm here with Armando Bolivar, who's my Assistant Director of Projects and Quality, and we're here today to request that our Customer Bill of Rights be renewed. Our existing Customer Bill of Rights has expired as of this past February 1st. January 31st was the last day. And I'd like to take you through what we've done over the past 2 years. This was originally implemented in February 1st, 2017, and it was set to expire again January 31st of this past year. The general manager was directed by the mayor to develop and implement the Customer Bill of Rights, and it was developed in consultation with the mayor's staff. It sets forth measurable performance standards, and it aligns with our current strategic plan. Within the department, the Customer Bill of Rights has been a cross-functional effort. I have two of my colleagues from the water and power system ready to answer questions if necessary, and we have been working collaboratively to achieve these commitments. The organization also supporting is Ann Santilli's organization, and they're tracking the metrics for us. The Customer Bill of Rights sets forth the department's service philosophy and provides clear and concise service level goals for our core business functions. We are consistently meeting 14 out of 19 service level commitments, and examples of this are on the current slide, and we have some areas of improvement which I will talk about next. We continue to work on new account sign-up process in order to achieve our targets, and we have plans in place and being implemented as we speak to improve our communications to customers during outages. These include responding more quickly, more often, and more conveniently for our customers. Here's a quick glance at some of our achievements. Our average wait time continues to be below 3 minutes. Our percentage of bills that we send within the meter reading window remains consistently around 95%. Water leaks are always investigated within 4 hours. We're performing well, but not to our ultimate goal to go to the customer premise to start their service within 1 business day. Upcoming efforts in outage notification for water system include more automation and more customer choices. So to recap, we're working with the Mayor's office to focus our efforts on a better outage communication and additional water and power service commitments. To give you a little more information, we did implement power outage, self-service, customer self-service power outage notification this past December, where customers can go onto their account and report an outage. We are optimizing the mobile website experience in March for this function. We are going to implement at the end of April community outage notification, and this will give customers the ability to receive proactive text messages or emails for up to 3 communities that they select during outage events. And these same efforts will be subsequently implemented on the water side. New construction and renovation continues to be a focus for us, and we have added this to our Customer Bill of Rights commitments. We continue to provide our customers with an incentive to sign up for auto pay and paperless billing, and we want to continue this offering. Currently, we have about 20% of our customers are enrolled in these programs. The industry average is closer to 30%, so we want to continue this incentive for our customers. And so in summary, I would like to ask the board to extend our Customer Bill of Rights. I would like to ask the board to add the new water and power service level commitments for construction and renovation projects. And finally, I would like to ask the board to continue allowing us to provide our customers with paperless and auto pay incentives. The Customer Bill of Rights is prominently posted on our website. It can be accessed via the residential area, then by clicking on the customer service link, and then selecting the Customer Bill of Rights. So that's all I have in the presentation, and I would like to entertain any questions you may have.
I just have one question. Why does this have to be renewed? You stated that this was going to expire soon. Why don't we agree to do this indefinitely and amend it as needed?
Yes, accountability.
Yeah, that's a great question. When it was first set up, since it was so new to us, when we implemented the first Customer Bill of Rights, we actually sunsetted it after 2 years because we just really were new at it. But now we have more confidence. We've been tracking the metrics. We feel we've made a lot of progress. And so we'd like to just, as you said, just extend it indefinitely.
Oh, you're seeking indefinite extension? I had the same question that Commissioner Noonan had initially until you started doing your report. And as you were doing it, it struck me that in terms of accountability, it's useful. I mean, I guess it doesn't need to be reinstituted all the time, but there ought to be progress reports such as this on a regular basis.
I would agree with that.
One comment. There's an important footnote at the end of item 22 saying if this conflicts with the service standards for water and power service, the service rules take precedent. When might it be time to update those rules, which haven't been changed since 2008, to reflect these standards?
Is there any reason not to do that?
Not as far as I know, no.
Sounds like a good recommendation. Do you need any commission activity to do that, or can that recommendation just be?
No, you would have to bring those rules back to the commission adopts the rules of service, so the recommendations for any changes to the rules of service would have to come before the board.
Well, I
recommendation for us to bring them.
Correct.
Right.
Noted.
So,
So Commissioner, we're in the process of reviewing those now.
Okay.
And determining what changes we need to make, and then once we determine that, it'll be separate from our presentation at the end of the month for the ADUs and recommendations for that. But we're in the process of reviewing those now, and we will bring those back with recommendations for changes.
great. When you see a Bill of Rights, I think there's an implication that these rights that are assured will occur. And if they don't occur, what happens? What if a customer says, this is my right, but you've failed to meet this criterion in this particular area, whatever it may be? What do we do?
There's explicit items in the customer bill of rights that if we don't meet the criteria, if a customer calls us, they are eligible for in most cases it's $25 service credit, and we kept that in the bill of rights.
Good. And just one other thing along those lines. Despite earlier conversations that experiences of individual commissioners may or may not be the appropriate way to look at certain things, I continue to get a lot of complaints and concerns about particularly getting power up and running for new projects. I don't know if that is contained in the Bill of Rights, but I wasn't sure if the item that you did reference something that looked close to that. I'm not sure if it was exactly that, but does that fit into the Bill of Rights? And if it does,
It does. The reference to once the customer construction is completed and the authorization for power to construct is issued, then we will have them energized within that 6-week time frame.
But I think on that issue, it's the last piece where it's ready to go that we're fine on. It's getting up to that piece that you're hearing about. So that's a whole nother effort, and we're making some good strides in that, and we're not where we want to be yet.
but that's not in the Bill of Rights.
But that's not in the Bill of Rights, because that's a process that's not wholly under our control, but we're trying to make that smoother
Well,
for
I know
our
you're
customers.
working on it. I just wasn't sure how it, or if it fit into.
Yeah, this is more like, once it's ready to go, we'll be there in a certain amount of time.
Okay.
And that's the part that we can totally control.
Okay.
I have a
Commissioner
comment.
Broad?
Yeah, part of my question had to do with yours, and that is the commercial customers, the people who are putting up projects, who are calling me saying it's just taking too long to get their project started. And it's basically power, the power side. It's taking 6 months, and they think that that's far too long. So that's not included in this at all. Is that right?
We have added 2 new service level commitments on the water and the power. I call that slide up right now. What we've done, we have not solved the problem that you're expressing. I think that's what Marty, you've got help in the back. Okay, oh, there you go.
Let me help you with that.
Jeff's going to tell us how he's fixing the whole thing.
Anyways, I'm Jeff Carvey. I'm the Director of Power New Business Development Technology Applications, and I've probably answered emails to a number of you regarding these things that the Commissioner's talking about. One of the cornerstones of this Bill of Rights is it starts with the submittal package and engaging our contractors early on in the process. And some of our pitfalls that we've had is not only in that submittal process of not getting all the information that we need up hand, and then the developers thinking that we're actually in design, but we don't have all of the pieces necessary to move forward with their design. So the communication, we've made tremendous strides in our communication with our customers and getting that point, and that's why we wanted to make that initial point of getting that submittal package and getting a complete submittal package and communicated that we have everything we need, and ultimately that leads to that you have a design engineer assigned to you and move forward. We are making strides in reducing that time in design, but we had to start at the beginning and get back to the basics. That we need to have all that information, and we need to let you know that we have all that information and communicate that to you so we can start with the design.
Thank you. If you have all that information, is there a backlog that people have to wait a long time?
Well, there is a backlog of work just with the nature of what we're faced with. We've added staffing. We've increased our staffing over 30% in the last about 9 months to address some of this backlog. On top of that process is we've engaged a lot of our large developers. We went out and reached out, engaged them and brought them in and asked them the pinch points that they're facing so that we could better serve them and understand that not only the large, small, but also the EV, solar, and storage customers. So we're trying to get a perspective of where we need to improve so that we can work together. And it all comes back to you.
So you are aware that there is a backlog?
Oh, yes. And we're working as hard as we can. We've got a lot of committed engineers and employees, focusing a lot of time and energy to reduce this backlog.
Okay.
I know you guys are making progress and are working assiduously in this area. What I've seen or heard now over a course of a lot of time is individuals change, we assign different people at different times. The ball gets dropped between going to the point A to point B to point C. I know there have been efforts to have a single point person, but that doesn't appear to be occurring certainly it doesn't always occur. So I don't want to have a lengthy, I don't want to drag this conversation into these individual, but the reason I'm so concerned is I've probably heard about this 50 times. And it doesn't seem to change in terms of the quantity of concerns that I've heard. So as long as you're here, I just wanted to reemphasize the fact that this work needs to be aggressively pursued, and I know you're doing that, but so far, this is a weak point in our system.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that to our attention. It's one of the, communication is probably the most important part that we've been addressing through our changes in our reorganization of our Power New Business Group. And, that communication is having escalation ladders for our customers to call up to get to the right people to, hey, if there's a problem, if we don't know about it, we can't address it. But when we start getting these, we'd rather get the information internally instead of coming out externally through other entities and then coming back to us. We want to fix it internally to find out who's not performing, who's not getting the information back so that we can work together to improve our service.
Yeah, I hear of many instances where people try to make calls, don't get callbacks, et cetera.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you for being here.
Well, and
Thank you.
And I just want to kind of reiterate, and I think in this particular area, and the reason that I was very interested in a robust conversation around these metrics and these issues, and I can go either way. I sort of like the idea that it's coming back for renewal, is at this level, and I think to Commissioner Levine's point, when you start talking about a Bill of Rights, it's an outcomes metric, period. All of the good intentions in the world don't matter if you're not hitting and delivering what you said you were going to deliver. And if we've set certain, sort of metrics or outcomes from the perspective of what our customer is going to experience, it seems to me that it's incumbent upon us to identify what what each of the elements are that need to be addressed in order to meet those metrics and to meet them. I have heard, and we've had a number of conversations, reports, and I've heard a lot about all the things that we are working on. But we do have to have, and I would like to see actual targets that we're committed to, by which we will have these items addressed, and they're just a normal part of our delivery. In my view, we've got to hold our operations to the same standards that we hold our sort of power and water units as it relates to delivery of projects. I mean, it's very concrete, no pun intended, but it's clear, and there I continue to be underwhelmed by the level of clarity and timeliness with respect to how we interface with our customers on a variety of levels. And I do take your point that how we communicate is a critical component of everything else that we do. So resolving that communications issue seems to be, the thing that will make the biggest difference. So we should be devoting a lot of time and attention to dealing with that. And as we continue to move forward with some of our other more aggressive modernization efforts, it will put more pressure on the customer service aspects of how we operate. And we've got to raise the bar in order to meet our ambitious goals and to reflect in this area the same level of confidence and forward thinking and excellence that we are seeking to drive in the other areas.
Commissioner Vasquez, you look poised.
I'm waiting on your cue. Thank you. So I have to step out to use the facilities, but I'm sure you give a really good presentation. I have 3 points that I want to make. Number one, where will the bills of rights in-house? Or is this something that when we have it done, our folks are going to get it with their bill and they're going to know what their bill of rights is? Or is this something that is going to be on our website? Or how are we letting customers know that we have a bill of rights that is protecting them?
It currently is on our website. I did describe, let me see if I have it in my notes. I do have a link. We have a link. But we can, at your direction, right now, if they call, we can direct them to the website. We can send them a copy of the Bill of Rights. We can post it at our customer service centers. So all of that is available to us.
That would be fantastic if I can indicate and recommend staff to do that, to maybe when you sign up, to be a DWP customer, that you also get your bill. I mean, it sounds to me like that would be a pretty normal thing to do. Okay. The other thing that I would like to mention is around accountability, and 2 fronts from us from the department. So I hear you said that if a customer is unsatisfied, they can get up to $25, from us not meeting their needs.
Pain and suffering.
$25 for pain of suffering. Thank you, Commissioner Barr. I'm wondering if we also have either a complaint hotline or a virtual mailbox or an actual mailbox where folks can also communicate when we are not being when we're not meeting our highest standards, and if this is also something that maybe goes to the ratepayer advocate. It seems to me that will be in his neck of the woods, that if I'm a customer and if I'm dissatisfied, and maybe I got my $25 and I'm like, all right, amazing, but still I'm dissatisfied, I can write a letter and say to the department expressing, what are my reasons, and if this goes to maybe another agency that held us accountable. Do we have that at the moment?
We have a plethora of ways customers can escalate issues. One of them is at the Office of Public Accountability, so we do work with them on significant issues that customers have. We also have escalated, we have an escalation in the call center and in our service centers where a lead or a supervisor handles a complaint, and we have things on the website such as Ask the GM or Ask Us, email us with questions. So there are many avenues for customers. So I'm not really opposed to any of that. I think that we have to make it easy for a customer to describe what their issue is. Right. We make it easy for them because the only way we can drive customer satisfaction is to make the experience easy for our customers. So I'm really open to any vehicle.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate that from your office, and I have worked closely with you in other issues, and I appreciate that. Yes.
May I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
On the back of the bill, there's a formal description of a formal complaint process.
Okay.
So if people are not getting basic satisfaction the first way, the formal way to issue file a complaint is on the back of the bill.
Excellent. I'll check my bill. I get it online, so I'm guilty of not having the actual bill in my hand. Lastly, around commercial folks and permitting and also making this experience satisfactory for them. They're also our customers in ways that our vendors. I have facilitated, and some of you have been there when I have facilitated, Jeff, you have been there when I have facilitated conversations with a lot of folks in the industry to try to bridge their complaints that I think have been voiced by my fellow commissioners as well. What I would like to also see is a monthly report on permit backlog. And I think that this will really help us to see how are we, either how many, how much backlog we have, how many complaints are we getting, and how are we mitigating those? Because unless we know, and I hear this constantly, not just complaints around connectivity, but that staff change, that things that people are not there, they're on the field, they can answer. I mean, this was actually a conversation that we had, that I hosted here at the department with a lot of folks, with a lot of developers and businesses here. So I think that what I would like to propose, I don't know if our council, we need a resolution, or if I can just instruct staff to have a permit backlog and a monthly report on permitting backlog, so we can see how many of those there are and how are we trying to resolve them.
If you wanted to make an ongoing thing as part of this package, you would make it an amendment to the resolution. Otherwise, you can just make a specific request of the general manager to provide you that information.
Okay. So I would like to ask the general manager to include a monthly report on a permit backlog around issues of permitting, just like we include other monthly reports to our board package. Senior President, is this okay with you?
It's fine. I'd just like to know how much of a burden that would be before, maybe a bi-monthly or a quarterly or something like that. I'm not sure monthly.
So it's a backlog of new services?
Well, or current services
Right.
that they have. Like I hear, personally, I hear a lot of issues with connectivity of businesses, or businesses that are maybe brand new and they're trying to integrate to the grid, and they're like in a space where no real answers for them.
I think we have most of the information pretty readily available, so we should be able to do that for you.
Thank you.
Is monthly feasible?
I believe it is. I'm not sure I mean, if it's just terms of numbers, there'll be a certain number of projects going out, other projects coming in. I'm not sure the numbers will change a whole lot, but it'll give us an indication.
I think most of that data, because of the processes that we've gone to develop our, further integrate our metrics so that we have more trackability with that. I believe monthly is acceptable. We'll check with our statisticians and Osram to make sure that that's available.
Okay, let's
Thank you,
give
Jeff.
it a try.
Give us maybe a couple months to start it, though.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I have a
Yes.
comment. Sharon, it was a good, very comprehensive report, and I just want to mention that whenever I contact Sharon, she's, like, within 24 hours, she handles whatever customer concern there is. Thank you very, very much. What's been the response from the public, if any, about this, about this Bill of Rights?
We have not gotten a lot of inquiries regarding the Bill of Rights. Now, we haven't maybe as overtly posted it as Commissioner Vasquez has asked us to, so we have no problem doing that, and then maybe I will come back with a different answer once we do that.
And when it says that we're voting on the reauthorization and the updates, what updates or changes are you proposing?
We are adding the new service level commitments for the water service installation and the power service installation. We would ask to continue to give our customers an incentive for auto pay and paperless. And finally, we were removing the sunset clause that every 2 years the board would have to reauthorize the Bill of Rights.
All right, one last question. You may not remember this because I asked it 6 years ago. But when people have an emergency, the menu on the phone, when they call in, it used to be kind of at the bottom. Do you have an emergency? Where is that now?
Commissioner, it's one level after the introduction of the menu. So once you're introduced and we identify ourselves as the LA Department of Water and Power, shortly thereafter there should be an option to report an emergency, and it'll ask you as to whether it's a water or a power specific emergency.
Okay, so first there's an introduction.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, because my concern was it was so far at the bottom, people had to listen to this whole menu, while they had an emergency and they had to wait. And sometimes they were told, call back in 45 minutes or call back tomorrow, and that was just really not satisfactory.
Yeah, that was modified a few years back.
Okay, thank you.
So the current motion is to continue. Dr. Pickle, do you have anything on this? The current motion is to continue this indefinitely, but with an understanding that there will be periodic updates.
Commissioner, did you want to build that into the resolution, the required?
Yeah, why don't we, if there's, maybe this would satisfy everybody, we'd continue it, we extend it indefinitely, but with an understanding that there'll be an annual report to the commission with regard to how it's going.
Then we make a motion to add a further be it resolved that the department will report on an annual basis progress and proposed updates.
So do we need to-
That language is acceptable.
That would be your motion, yes.
Then second.
Those in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
It's unanimously continued indefinitely. Thank you very much. Nice job.
And just quickly, when should we expect there to be a reconciliation between our current policies on either water or power side with the actual customer Bill of Rights standards? When would that reconciliation happen, and how is that going to be reported out to us?
Are you talking about getting more granularity in terms of the?
Well, no, Dr. Pickle indicated that these standards are subject to...
the regular rules.
Yes, are subject to the regular standards that currently exist with respect to water and power.
So Jeff's staff is reviewing our rules right now for things where we need to recommend and make changes.
And so I'm asking when that will be done and how that will come back
It's
to us.
actually a collaborative effort because there's a number of things that we want to package together. And I'm going to say at this point 90 days. Because there's, like I said, there's a lot of intricacies that we're looking at and getting through that. I know that there's, in the short term, there's some information coming for ADUs, but we're looking at this, that we'd like to do it, try to get as many things into that board action at that one time.
Okay, and so at that point, we'll also know to the extent that there's anything that's inconsistent that's not changing, that would have implications for this particular Bill of Rights. We'll also know that as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have 3 agenda items left on the open calendar, items 12, 14, and 21. We have a speaker card for item 12.
Yes,
Commissioner,
the speaker for item 12 is Jack Humphrey.
did you have something?
No,
Over time, we've asked for information on the fiber optic network, starting back when the DWP purchased it from the city for what I believe was $20 million. We have never received this information. At one point in time, one commissioner said, we've already seen the report, but we're not going to share it with you. I'd like to get a better understanding about what this fiber optic network is all about, how much it's costing DWP, and how it fits into the DWP system. The only time I see it here is when we're leasing out space, or leasing out whatever you call it, capacity. So, it sounds like, you put 20 million bucks into it. I understand that it's supposed to fit within the system, the smart meters and all those types of things, but it'd be nice to have a better understanding of what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Who is presenting this item?
I don't think my staff is here. As Jack mentioned, this fiber optic network goes across the city, and it is primarily used for support of the power and the water communication systems. And as additional revenue, we do lease the extra dark fibers to various entities that can use it. And these are standard lease agreements, and we have set rates that we have established to recover the costs related to providing this extra service, and it offsets some of the cost of managing the fiber optic network for our own operations. So this is a standard provision. You can see it's $714,000 over the term of the lease for this particular lease. Ann, do you know the estimate of how much revenue we get annually from?
It's not significant, but it is enough to offset our costs, and these do require board approval. So I think it's a few million each year.
Yeah,
we
there
can
was.
bring that back.
Had it not been for the speaker, this would have been accepted by consent. But with regard to the speaker, is there any reason that, is there any confidentiality here? Is there any reason that the questions can't be answered that were raised by the?
So I wasn't here 2 years ago when Jack asked this question, so I would be happy to talk to him offline and see what specific questions are and bring a report back to the full board on this operation, what we use it for.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's fine.
That would be great.
Louis, does that work? Okay.
Jack, you two will have a conversation and see whether that satisfies you, and you'll let us know if it doesn't, I assume. Is there a motion?
Yeah.
Second, those in favor? Aye. It's approved. Thank you. Okay, our final open agenda item, for which there is also one speaker card, is item 21, which...
What about item 14?
Item 14.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
Wait, but no. Oh, yeah, that's correct. I'm sorry. It's 1214 and, yeah.
And I have 4
Item
speaker
14.
cards for 14.
And we have 3 speaker cards for item 14. And this is amendment number 2 to agreement number 473796 for evaluation and expansion of North American Electric Reliability Corporation compliance program. 4 speaker cards.
Okay, and then we'll also have Simon Zudu and P-Joy Chua from the power system.
Okay,
to
well, let's
answer
hear
any
from the
questions.
4 speakers. So Barbara, go ahead and call.
Okay, the first speaker is Tom Pike, and after that, Carol and Chris.
Hi, thank you for hearing from me again. This is in my capacity as a ratepayer and not Los Feliz Neighborhood Council representative. You usually hear from members of the public when they're disappointed, so I wanted to begin by saying I fully believe this agency is capable of reaching the clean energy future it is striving for. The strides we're making, especially the decision not to repower the gas plants at Skagit, Harbor, and Haines, have been meaningful steps, and I'm proud of our city. I'm concerned, though, that we're discussing a $4 million contract for Navigant, a consulting firm that recommended repowering those dirty gas plants. Worley Parsons' role in fossil fuel construction also worries me. I have nothing against these consultants as people, but it seems to me that their expertise is suited more to fossil fuels than renewables. As we contemplate the massive challenge of leaving dirty fuels behind, I wanted to encourage this board to ensure that the firms it contracts with have the expertise necessary to rise to this challenge. And thank you for your clean energy leadership.
Okay, the next speaker is Carolyn Chris, and after that, Jed Parker.
Good afternoon. I'm Carolyn Chris. I'm an Indivisible leader from Sherman Oaks. I'm part of the Greater Los Angeles Indivisible Coalition. I'm also a recently elected delegate to the California Democratic Party. And I too am concerned with this contract with Woolsey Parson and Navigated because they are, Woolsey is a fossil fuel energy and construction company. Navigant, we're working together to repower the with gas on the coastal plants. And this contract to renew their consulting for $4 million seems like not the best use for ratepayer money when we have just committed to 100% renewable energy. So I too am questioning the wisdom of using ratepayer money on companies that have previously supported fossil fuels. I think it needs to be rethought. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Jed Parker, and after that, Dana Clark.
Thank you. I'm Jed Parker. I'm a current Indivisible leader in California, Indivisible California 33, also in Venice Resistance. And I slogged my way through over a decade on Venice Neighborhood Council. So I understand something of what you guys go through on a daily basis. I want to thank you for your service and emphasize what the two prior speakers have said. I would like to understand what this $4 million is for. I've just spent about 25 minutes looking through to try and understand what the first version of this contract was for, which I believe was awarded in 2015 or 16 for about $1 million. And there may have been an interim contract that I was not able to find in that 20-minute search. But I'd like to understand why $4 million is going over $1 million, or maybe there was another couple million in there that I was not able to find. If it has to do, for example, with funding some kind of inspections or reliability things having to do with closing down the fossil fuel facilities, I think the public would love to know that. A use about expansion of facilities themselves, I think would be detrimental to the public, as others have already said, and you'll continue to hear going forward. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dana Clark.
Your points have been made, I assume. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Simon Zodu. I'm the Manager for Regulatory Compliance and Specifications of Power System.
And good afternoon, Commissioners. Pedro Chua, Regulatory Compliance Manager for the Power System.
A little bit of background on item 14. LADWP is an owner and operator of a high-voltage bulk electric system, and as a result of that responsibility, we are mandated to comply with North American Electric Reliability Corporation reliability standards. These are standards that were approved, have been approved by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And the NERC reliability standards are very critical to our operation. They're divided into two major parts. These are family of standards for operation and planning, and we do have family of standards for critical infrastructure protection and the cybersecurity as it pertains to the bulk electric system. So the amendment request that you have before you is necessary additional professional services that we need to accomplish in preparation for the 2020 federal government audit in January 2020. We're preparing for that. I would like to make a note that this contract has nothing to do with the OTC effort that was handled by Worley Parsons and Navigant. This is a separate reliability procedures and guidelines and training to our staff and subject matter experts. We have done a lot of work on the operation and planning area, but we do have some work to do in the critical infrastructure and cybersecurity area. The standards have evolved and changed over the years, and this is an effort really to realign and mirror what we have accomplished on the operation and planning area with the critical infrastructure and cybersecurity area. So again, this has nothing to do with resources. It's about training our subject matter experts. We do conduct mock interviews. We do internal controls guidance. Compliance, in essence, is about documentation and making sure that we do have the evidence for what the requirements are, mandating us to, accomplish. So this is a race, if you will, to prepare our staff and our guidance documents for the 2020 WIC audit. And there are some things that we have learned over assessments that we have conducted over the past year about our system that we'd like to improve, especially in the critical infrastructure area, both physical security and the cyber assets that we have in the high voltage bulk electric system. So that's what the request is about.
So these are standards that have been established that we have to meet, and this is designed to help us to,
yes,
to
Commissioner.
meet them.
That's correct.
Yeah. And it is unrelated.
Totally unrelated. There's no nexus between this contract and the efforts with OTC.
And the what? I didn't hear you.
There was no relationship or no nexus between the effort, the contract that we have here, and the run-through cooling study that was conducted by Worley Parsons and Navigant.
If I may add, essentially the work that is going to be performed under this amendment is to prepare LADWP for the upcoming audit in the first quarter of 2020. As a major operator and owner of bulk power in North America, we are required to meet certain reliability standards. This is common across the board for any owner or operator in the bulk electric system.
And this audit is being performed by the North American Electric Reliability Corporation?
It's going to be performed by WEC, Western Electricity Coordinating Council, who are the enforcers in the western region of the United States through the
But
guidance
these are
of
NERC standards?
Correct.
Yeah.
And FERC.
I move approval.
I just have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, under alternatives considered, you state there is no viable alternative to be considered. Why is that? If you could elaborate.
Contractually, this would give us the most viable and the best pathway to our preparation. The alternatives that we can have is basically if I might digress a little bit, for early 2020 audit, typically data requests are made to the department 3 or 4 months in advance. So that would bring us around September, October of 2019. We don't have a lot of time. We have learned about our system, things that we need to improve about 2 months ago. And we would like to use this contract to make sure that by the time data requests are made, our subject matter experts are ready, our guidance documents are prepared, and that would take us even further. As you notice, it's a 2-year extension. In 2020, a lot of our facilities will be in scope under some of the standards. So we need to prepare not only on the work in front of us, but looking forward, we need to prepare our guidance documents to meet that. But this is just the most viable contractual solution that the department has in front of it.
Yeah, I just think we have to be careful about our wording. That's not true. There are other viable alternatives, but they wouldn't be as efficient as continuing to work with this firm.
Because this is a renewal of a contract.
Correct.
And so I think representing that a little bit better helps the people who made the trip to come here, and have them, feel heard as to why we're continuing to work with this company.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Noonan.
Yeah, and I guess my only comment, and it falls a little in line, I think, with Commissioner Noonan's observation. It just goes to, I don't know to what extent this work was unanticipated. I mean, I assume that there's an audit schedule, and so these aren't like big surprises. That's one. And then two, so that just gets me to the whole idea of kind of a contract amendment. So if you start at $1 million and you end at $7 million, it just, kind of seems like an interesting way of avoiding or sort of limiting opportunities for others. I mean, if we have a work scope that is a $7 million work scope, then that should be what it is. And again, if it were a sort of an amendment to a construction contract, there'd be all kinds of explanations about how this went over budget and what the cause was, and we'd be questioning the scoping, the original scoping. So here on a professional services contract, I just have questions about, or just want to caution us to think about how we deal with scope creep. And I certainly, appreciate, the reasons as you've outlined them as to why you want to continue with this particular contractor and how it would be, I think to Commissioner Noonan's, point, inefficient to go out and start over when there's already a course of work underway. But I think that there's just a little bit of the, amendment versus original scope that's a little, that's the piece that kind of unsettles me a little bit, or I think kind of raises kind of like, what's this all about? So I would just caution us to be more thoughtful at the onset as to, what we're contracting for and what the scope of that work is going to be.
I would agree with that. One of the things that the standards are changing so quickly, especially around the physical security and the cyber security, that things change so rapidly that at times, there's just not time to go and things, I think we need to do a better job of preparing. And in a previous amendment, we kind of talked about we're going to train our staff so we don't have to rely on this. And that's always our goal, that we can do this work in-house. I think based on the last audit they did for us in preparing for this next audit, we realized that some things came really quickly that we didn't foresee or that the standards had changed. But clearly we understand we need to do a better job planning ahead before, because we did kind of say in this one that, hey, you know what, we're gonna train our staff so we don't have to rely on contracts, and we need to stick to that if that's what we tell you we're going to do. In this case, I think the standard changed so quickly that there just wasn't time, and we didn't have the time to fully train the staff, but we're working towards that and increasing that staff so that we don't have to keep doing this.
Yeah, and that sounds like a couple of $1 million revenue or just savings for the department. So I think that I definitely applaud you for that.
And the important thing is, the reason we have to be so careful and make sure we do this right, because being not in compliance, the fines can be very significant.
That's for sure. I just want to make a quick comment. I am going to vote for this item because I agree that we need to move forward with being compliant to FERC, NEC, and the West Region and such, so I understand that. I do want to reflect on the comments made today by the public and the idea that it seems to me the public really wants to see our dollar or their dollar amount being invested on things that are in congruence with our values and their values. So it sounds to me that as, if we're going to continue moving towards a much more renewable future, it sounded to me that the comments were leading us or really shining the light to who are we doing also business with. And I know that these are very complicated. I was reading on the package, the resolution and all of the details. And I know that this is quite complicated and not just any company can come and do it, and we have an standing relationship with them, so they have really supported us and helping us historically, but also how would it look like for a company that works here in LA that maybe does similar audits to be doing this type of stuff, with us. So I'm glad to hear that staff are getting up to speed to do it in the future. So we are less reliant to outside companies where we can really keep the savings here in-house.
I move approval. Is there a second? Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, in addition to the one remaining item, I skipped over the file items, et cetera, which we'll go back to after item 21. And that leads to item 21. Cooperative purchase agreement for marketing and advertising services, Quigley Simpson and Hepplewhite Inc. And we have one speaker card.
Oh, Jack is back.
Ah, what a surprise.
Your Uber gadfly.
Oh, boy.
I haven't read through the contract, and I think what I did read is, it sounds like DWP needs help in organizing its media routine. My concern is two things. One is, it was on the agenda several weeks ago or several months ago. I couldn't find it on the search engine, which, by the way, needs a lot of help. But I couldn't find it on the search engine. So whenever it gets deferred, it always sort of raises an antenna. The second thing I'm concerned about is I want to make sure that it goes for DWP purposes, conservation, operations, things along those lines. I don't want to have it to be in a situation like we had with Mark Ridley Thomas on the Proposition H, when he did Proposition H, which is under litigation, where he spent $1 million of county money promoting it, or like Metro spent $10 million promoting Measure M, or like the County Flood District and promoting Measure W. Those are, I think, totally inappropriate types of expenditures which are being litigated. I haven't seen the DWP do something like that, but it's an area of concern. Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Thank you, Jack.
That's it for
Who's
today.
presenting? If we had another item, then you could have another speaker card.
you just had a hat trick.
That's true.
Good afternoon,
We
President
did.
Levine, Vice President McLean Hill, Commissioners, Mike Basich, Assistant General Manager, Marketing and Economic Development. I want to begin with an apology because the last time I presented to you, I said I will never be the last speaker before you and lunch.
Yeah.
So I apologize for interrupting with that schedule once again. I'd like to talk to you about this contract, and I would like to thank you for your consideration today. I appreciate us being here. If you consider the meeting today, and if you consider the meeting 2 weeks ago, they were rich with content. And it kind of drives home the point of why we're here and why we need some assistance with advertising and why we could do a much better job. So I will talk about the main goals of the board and the general manager, which you know is electrification of transportation, groundwater cleanup, as we heard some today, smart grid, equity hiring, and back to basics, which we do talk about. Today we also heard issues like prices, the environment, of which surveys show those are key indicators for us, and they make us more popular with our customers when we tout our environmentalism, and we're truly a national leader on that. We also want to talk about value, the local control of dollars to stay in the community, and we think we have the vehicle for doing something like that. So we're here to present a piggyback contract. This Quigley, we'll call him short for Quigley, will serve as an ad buying broker, which takes a lot of our time that we could be spending on creative matters and outreach and not the technicalities of booking an ad and measuring an ad and so forth. They will leverage the media buying experience and support increased engagement with small and minority-owned media outlets, which is what we're doing more and more of. Very specific, hyper-specific groups that we want to reach. This is now giving us a more direct way to do that. More ad placements for less money and deeper penetration. We can change out the ads faster. They'll be cheaper for us. And the pricing advantage to maximize outreach dollars and expand reach and frequency. So we don't have to wait till there's more money on a purchasing card before we can take another ad out. We can respond pretty quickly. And sometimes we do need to respond pretty quickly. If there's an emergency situation or some kind of construction notice, we need to be able to get in the media as quickly as possible. So LADWP staff is going to be responsible for a lot of things, and it's going to be identifying and selecting the media outlets. Most importantly, designing marketing campaigns and content, which has been a huge year for us with the rebrand, because we're really getting integrated with some of these groups and getting them to consider marketing early on when there's a water conservation effort, or especially groundwater. We're going to be, pardon the pun, knee-deep in groundwater with the groundwater group, because we'll be helping them communicate what that means to our customers. We can also identify smaller, unique media markets, very ethnic, very neighborhood-focused, and some of our community partners have also expressed a reluctance to work with us at sometimes because it's a little bit cumbersome for a small vendor to get on board. Just a couple of thoughts here from a vendor. There's actually more from this vendor, but I just put a couple. Main point here is this is a very stressful process on small companies such as ours. We've heard this repeatedly. We are doing business again with some businesses that previously stopped doing business with us. Can you imagine LADWP? No, we don't want your business because it's too hard, but it has happened to us. In another quote, our sense is you've got one process for all contractors. I can't imagine too many small businesses can afford to carry the cost of a process like this. So in many cases, what we're hearing is a small media vendor or media buyer is spending $1,400 with us just to get us to place a $400 ad with them. And it's not even a contract, that's a one-off. So there's no guarantee to them that we're going to be back again after they've gone through some labor and some costs. So that's one side of it. The other side, and I'll just kind of show you some of the places without reading it where we do utilize a diverse roster of where we're advertising in print. You can see here we're trying to be even more specific. There's even more than you see on your screen now. And some of our radio and TV and some of the other places that we advertise and some commercials on cable and so forth, we'll be doing much more of that. Here's other Quigley clients in the area. We have Yelp, Disney, the fire department, the police department, of course, Metropolitan Water District, and they've had great success with this particular contract, which is why we want to try to hop on it and get out there. May I also say, the other thing the contract offers us is metrics as to how the ads are performing, which we've never done before. So we can actually get a measurement of what a particular ad did in a particular venue. If it's good, great, let's increase it. If it's not performing, let's get rid of it. We've never really known. We're just kind of throwing things out there, or have traditionally, and kind of guessed how it's doing based on responses. So in answer to Mr. Humphreyville's concern earlier, yes, this will be all LADWP based on our goals and some of the great stories that we're bringing to the board meeting that will not be used for anything else. Some of the
I'm not clear. How are you going to track the performance of these ads?
The contract calls for them to track the metrics of how they're being performed, how they're performing. So they'll put it out and they'll tell us the circulation, they'll tell us where it went to, and they'll tell us how many people responded. And we'll be in cooperation with them because we'll be tracking phone numbers, we'll be tracking web hits and so forth. Okay. So we've had some success on our own. For example, with the LA Auto Show this year, our sponsorship netted a 40% increase to web traffic this year, with actually less than 50% of the sponsorship costs that we spent last year. So we want to be strategic, not just blanket everything. So we're going to hit some of the areas, and I've mentioned these at the beginning of the presentation: the Equal Opportunity Employment Office. We're going to talk, of course, about electric transportation, low-income support. Recruitment's huge for us, and we're spending a lot of time on recruitment. Water and energy efficiency and conservation. Where we are putting some of these new ads, we are seeing a substantial increase. There's also going to be a unification with the web, and this will be what our LADWP staff is doing. We're designing everything to make sure everything is seamless, from a brochure to a mouse pad to a print ad to a leave-behind brochure that they can share with others, like our low-income brochure, to online. It's got to be seamless, and right now it's still a little not quite there yet, but we're getting closer to it. And then messaging and notifications. Some of our ads are very complicated, and they're just serious notifications. But again, just to kind of point out some of what this meeting covered and last week or 2 weeks ago's meetings covered, not everything can be a cute ad, although we want to grab people's attention. Sometimes we do have to put an ad with a little real estate on it and say, here's what we're doing for groundwater, here's why it's important to you, here's why we're of value to your community, here's why you, our customer owners, should be proud to own your own local utility. So with that, thank you. Kept it as short as I could, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Commissioner Barad.
The fee is $6 million.
Mm-hmm. Up to, but it's not necessarily that we're going to spend that over 2 years.
Okay, and who is it that's going to place the ads?
The administrator, the Quigley, will place the ads based on what we tell them to do.
All right, and do they get the commission?
They get a 6% commission, but we're going to realize, because of their buying potential and their buying capability, we're going to realize, I think, a greater than a 6% savings. So it's almost a wash, or we'll actually come out a little bit ahead. Not to mention the staff time that we can free up. I have a great staff member, Kimberly Hughes, but she's here today, by the way, but she's more of a creative, and she's spending a lot of her time placing ads and measuring things instead of...
So that's $6 million plus the 6% commission on ads placed by Quigley.
The $6 million includes the percentage.
Oh,
Yes.
I asked you if it was in addition.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said yes.
No.
So that includes?
Right.
Now, how do you know that that's what that's going to be, that's included?
That was in the contract. It's just a brokerage fee, and it's just a percentage.
But you don't know how many ads?
No. So we will, we'll probably get, if it's approved, we want to get started, and we'll see probably coming back to the board to let you know how it's doing.
And, okay. There's something else I was going to ask. Oh, why are we doing this through the utilization of the MWD?
It's just for, to be expeditious about it. It would take us a little bit longer to come back with our own RFP, although that was an alternative solution as well. But they already have the contract. They've already had success. Metropolitan's been very happy with them. So we were piggybacking, which is something we can do here.
So that the $6 million and the ad placement is paid by DWP and some of it by Metropolitan Water District?
No, it's going to be just us paying for just our ads. Metropolitan has their own agreement similar to ours with Quigley.
That's separate?
Separate.
All right. Somewhere I saw that you had the list of the outlets, the local papers.
Some of our outlets that we've associated with in the past, I did have a slide here.
Yes. Okay. Right there. No, there.
Here or the other one?
Next one. No, the one before. There it is.
Okay.
I think that you need to have some kind of input from people who live in those communities that understand media about using some of these outlets.
I would agree. Part of what Quigley would provide is some survey, which would include surveying the local population of where these ads are going to be placed.
Because some of these papers that you list are just throwaways.
You're true, and some of them we don't even necessarily advertise with. Currently, I'm just giving you a historical snapshot of everywhere we've been.
Yeah, well, I think some of these would be just a waste.
I will talk to you offline. I'd like to know which ones would be a waste, and I will avoid
Okay,
those.
because I've got my red pen ready.
Okay, please do. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, we've had extensive conversation about this particular item, and I note that from the last time it was before us, the term is shorter now.
Yes.
And that will give us the opportunity to both get started, but also to think about a more tailored RFP specifically for DWP needs, so that we are not simply replicating what Metro's doing. I agree. You began your presentation by noting both conversations that took place at the board meeting last time and this time, and the degree to which a number of the matters addressed up here had to do with how we communicate to our customer, and not just how, but I think from my perspective also what.
Right.
And so I'm curious as to not just the mechanics of how we're going to be going about doing it, but also what the goals are and how we measure both where we are and the impact after, engaging in this kind of activity, and really, and what we're measuring that against, because obviously there will be, there's some change I would expect, but what kind of change, what messages are we trying to shape? How do these things not just integrate with specific initiatives, but also in the overall, how does it benefit our customers' understanding of, appreciation of, support of the department and its work? And when might or how might we see a presentation around that?
Great question. We actually have already begun through actually the customer service department. Sharon's group conducts surveys, and some of the survey groups are very intense as to what they're looking at. Specifically to your question, they're looking at what topics are important to our customers, and they're looking at it by demographic, They're looking at it by what messages move the needle. They're looking at it by what messages aren't so important anymore. Maybe a print ad is not as important to a millennial anymore as something else, something totally electronic. So we do have some data, and we can see, based on our communications, in fact, we just had a meeting with this gentleman from MSI Cogent, who came in to present some surveys to us yesterday. We did have a meeting to see what topics would be of interest to our customers. We have always, and we already know, and we can probably bring this back at some date, just kind of give you an idea of these communications pieces. Our environmental issues are fantastic. Where we're not doing so fantastic is we are a well-performing utility, but we're not telling people necessarily that we're well-performing. So it's okay to do that. I know there was an issue 10 years ago with another advertising firm, but it is okay to go out there and brag a little because our customer owners have the right to know we're doing a good job. And yes, things break, but most days out of the year, things do not break. If there is a breakage or a power outage, there's a reason for it. It's actually incumbent upon us to tell our customers why things break, why power goes out, what we do in a power restoration, and what we're doing when, from the time your lights go out. It's an impressive story, and I don't believe I've ever heard it here in this community. So we can measure with both this firm here, but we can also measure with some outside firms that do this exclusively for a living, and we have some of them already on board, so they provide some really interesting information.
And then the other thing I'd like to understand is the interaction or the relationship, to the extent that there is one, between our paid media and our earned media strategy, because it seems to me that we are constantly involved in both.
Right.
And so I'm just interested in how they connect, if they connect, where they overlap, and again, strategically, if we're successful, what is it that our customers will think, will know, will understand about?
That's a great question, and I will actually like to bring back something that I presented to the board about a year ago, where we talked about paid, earned, shared, and owned media strategies. So we did talk about that. We do have a strategic goal for that, which is we do want to educate our customers, but we want to instill a little bit. One of the things that keeps coming up over and over again in some of our surveys is when our customers feel like they know us or know an employee, they tend to like us. So one of the things we need to do, in addition to explaining all these great things, is introduce them to some of our employees as it relates to some of what we're doing. So Evelyn Cortez Davis was here earlier, and Rafael Villegas was here presenting earlier. They're actually going to appear in an ad, and we're actually going to say, this is Evelyn Cortez Davis. She's a senior engineer. Here's what she does. Here's why that matters to you. So we want to, and I don't know if we've listed out, Commissioner, to answer your question without being too rambling, I don't know if we've listed out what at the end of a year do I want customers to know, but we can certainly do that. I can certainly bring you back our earned and shared media strategy and identify some of those points.
Along that line, what about the gender equity and, women applying for the non-traditional roles?
Right. So we are all about it. And if you probably don't recall, but I could maybe do a modified version of the marketing update we did last year. We targeted very specifically the equity metrics presentation I think you're going to hear later. It's very important to us that it's in real life. So we want to put certain demographics on billboards and advertisement and in communities, talking to those people and showing them this is a great place to work. And we also want female recruiters. We want many females in our advertising campaign, including non-traditional roles like linemen, and of course the roles that we have identified that we need, like engineers and so forth. So
I saw the brochure that you did with the cute little blonde on the front, who was supposed to be a line person. And I think we need I noticed that some of the ads on TV are actually showing actual people doing the job.
Right.
And I think that's what we need to do. Instead of having somebody just smile,
right.
I think it needs to be somebody, in this case, a woman, going up the pole, the power pole, and actually doing the job.
Well, Commissioner, I completely agree with you, and this has been a frustration of mine, is we do go out there, we do film actual employees, and then, in fact, in Western Electric magazine, We won second place for a photo contest, and it was a recruitment photo with a female that works here at LADWP. She is, however, shy about having her picture out on any of our collateral. So this has happened a few times. I've talked to Local 18. They've invited me to come speak to them because we really do, and we're about to send out a letter saying, please volunteer. That's why Evelyn is going to get a special gift from me personally, not from the department, for doing this, because it's going to start a trend. But we have had employees, we've used them, we've used actual real employees, and then they get hazed or razzed by fellow coworkers. So we need to get over that cultural hump. That's my job.
Yes.
I'll try to do something about that. But I will, if the ad hoc marketing committee does meet sometime, I'll bring the Western Energy magazine and I'll show you the picture. It was stunning. It was done by our photographer. It's our employee. She didn't want us to use it. So I feel your pain, and I'm working in that direction right now.
Commissioner, I have a few comments. I understand that I'm not quite familiar with the media communications plan or the digital strategies plan that you guys have. I think what's at hand here is that we are about to approve or not a contract for $6 million with Quigley. So the question that I have is, why Quigley, and why in our efforts to hire locals, in our efforts to hire, we're in Los Angeles. We're in Los Angeles, a city where media and strategies and marketing, I mean, this is, you name.
Right.
There's got to be tons of people here and companies that do this. This is $6 million that is going to go to one company. Nothing against them. They have a beautiful website I'm looking at. They have amazing customers. They have Yelp. They have PG&E. They have Chase. All the great Weight Watchers too. Amazing. But my question is, why them and why not slicing the pie to people that work here in Los Angeles, that know us really well, that know us, our communities really well? I'm also wondering if they're going to be really culturally competent with the communities that we serve. And also in terms of language. And they seem like a big company, so I'm sure they have some specialists that, and I hope that they don't do what Nike did, which was misspell Colombia from Columbia. But, but I'm sure that they have somebody competent out there that can, do an amazing work also in other communities. But what I want to see is $6 million invested in this community with people that work, live, and breathe here. And I don't know if Quigley is that company.
It's a very excellent point. Quigley is a local company. And furthermore, most of the money for that, not all of it's going to Quigley, most of it will go to the community, to these media sources that we're identifying. In the board package and the exhibits, if you look at Exhibit B, you can see their hiring standards, which are our hiring standards that they had to adhere to, and who they have to give business to, preferential treatment to. And then in Exhibit E, you can see some of the subcontractors that they use that deploy specialty for the Asian market, specialty for the Latino market. So we did consider this. Most of this money is staying in this community to talk about this department that the city owns. So we have considered it. And of course, this was done to be expeditious, to get this done in a quick manner. I've been here for a year. We really do need to speed things up a little bit, and we kind of get tied up by our internal processes to a degree, so we need a little help to speed it up, and we can certainly come back and revisit our own, whatever we want to do in the future.
I do want to see these. Actually, I have been a firm advocate to see this better, to see our digital strategies being more robust and more targeted, better to understand the analytics. I get that. I just think that up to $6 million, and I know that they're going to be outsourced to media ads and social media ads and such. It is let's say that they take home $1 million. It's a lot of money when we have local small businesses, companies that can potentially compete with a contract like this. I know because I have also heard from other folks, vendors that work with us on how the constraints, that it has taken people even a year to get a contract here, that they're still up and pending.
Well, so I think that was, because we had a conversation about this before we established the subcommittee, so it would probably be wise for these sorts of things to go to the subcommittee first. But one of the reasons that the contract is coming back in its current form is to achieve sort of a balance. It was a longer term. The term has been shortened, and which will provide time for, which will allow the benefits of having a firm on board and doing the work happening while the department puts together an RFP to deal with precisely the issues that you've raised, to provide an opportunity for a broader range of competitors. And as I understand it, the ability to, quote, piggyback on MWD is being utilized both because it's a contract that meets what our RFPs, our general standards would be, but we can enter into that contract now. But if you could address that point, I was advised, and you're just confirming that it could take, a year were we to start the RFP process before we got anybody on board. And there's a lot of work that can be done in that year plus, is my understanding.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's absolutely correct. In order to do a full-blown procurement for this type of service would take at least a year, probably 8 or 9 months to put it together and several months to execute. And so this allows us to move forward immediately with the piggyback, and the maximum amount that Quigley is going to get under this contract is $360,000. The rest of it goes to local media outlets. And they're a local firm too, but they're not a small media outlet, obviously. And so I point out like the Salvadoran paper that you brought to my attention, they would have a very difficult time having the insurance, all the affidavits that have to be filled out, everything.
This allows for a more efficient processing or spending of our media dollars with a broader range of local media markets, or not media markets, but media partners, while also giving us more efficient means we can put more money on the street, we free up staff time, and we can utilize some of the lessons learned in the context of the RFP that we will issue that will open up more competition, right?
Yes, correct. Yes, and Quigley assumes the responsibility for all the city responsibilities with respect to contracting, and relieves these smaller, sometimes very small firms from that obligation. I do feel I should forewarn you that we've got more of these coming, and I think it's a similar thing, and I'll point to the most important. We do a lot of survey work, and we're going to make a presentation to you on this. The most important thing we can do for our customers is make it easy on them, making transacting business with us a pleasure. And the way you do that mostly these days is with a premium digital experience. We don't really offer that. It's the biggest criticism our customers have about us. We like your people, we like what you do, the basic service that you provide is excellent, but dealing with you is difficult. That's the message we get in focus groups and surveys, and the primary reason for that is the digital experience is lacking. And you all know that because you've been on our website. So we are bringing back, the city just did their website, and they hired a couple of firms that we really like a lot. And so we're going to suggest, if you want to move this forward quickly, have it done in months instead of years, that we piggyback onto the city contract and procure that vendor to immediately begin to fix this website, make it mobile optimized, and make it a pleasure for our customers to interact with us in a digital environment. So that's coming. I hope you'll support it.
Well, the thing that I would support, and I would just really like to kind of shift a little bit of how some of this is happening. For me, it's very difficult to deal with issues on a contract-by-contract basis. So before I see a contract, it's always helpful to understand what the strategy and the plan is, which is, again, we've arranged ourselves, or we've put together committees which should make that easier for, to be provided at least to the subcommittees, and they can, at the time of presentation, inform the commission. But the idea that what you're telling me is we've got contracts coming, that really offers me cold comfort, because what I don't understand is what the work is that we've planned, what the timeline is that we've planned for that work, what the ultimate outcomes are. So a much bigger strategic conversation for me would be helpful.
Absolutely, and we're scheduled to meet with the ad hoc committee to discuss how all that works, and then back in front of you. So I look forward to that opportunity.
Brief comment? If
What?
possible. Brief comment?
Yeah.
I support going ahead with this contract. Let me start with that. But as a general standard at public utility commissions for utility advertising is if it involves an area in which you have a monopoly, it should be paid for by the shareholders, not by the ratepayers. Well, we don't have separate shareholders. So that clouds what I have to say, but burnishing your brand, generally a no-no for payment by ratepayers. But if it's helping with hiring employees, if it's helping with conservation, if it's helping with an area in which you want to compete, in which you don't have monopoly, electric vehicles, that's fine. So there are general guidelines offered for reasonableness of advertising in the investor-owned utility area.
And everything is tied to a call to action. We're not just branding. We are tying everything specifically. If you've seen some of these shopping bags walking around, it was tied to our electric vehicle programs and our information. So I'm keenly aware of that. And I have worked in a municipal utility space for 20 years. So it's one of my nightmares if something goes out there without a message to do something.
Is there a motion?
I move passage of item 21.
Second. Those in favor? Aye.
I just want to take a quick moment to thank Marty Adams, who I think has served as such a wonderful figurehead for the Department of Water and Power. I applaud how whenever there's an emergency, a situation involving DWP, you're the first person I see on the news reporting the event in a very accurate, user-friendly manner. And the last time I saw you, I asked, how many nights out of the week do you go out? Because you are at everything, and you serve as such a wonderful example of what this department tries to do for its ratepayers. So
he's our mascot.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I will say, Mr. Wright says hello. He's about to meet with Senator Harris's staff. He's in D.C.
He's being ably represented.
Doing the important work. So good he said this hello.
So
It's in his regards.
back to my question. Those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimously.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Before we go to closed session, we've got monthly reports, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, January.
Monthly reports?
Monthly reports, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, January.
Your report is in the packet, and I'd be happy to
Any
answer any
questions?
questions.
I just want to say thank you. I see that you not only memorialized my request, but you've implemented my request of procurement requests outlining history, 10 years, at least 10 years, if not more. So thank you.
Power System, January.
That report is in your file. Be happy to answer questions.
Questions? RPS Energy Storage and EV Projects Update, January.
Also in your file.
Questions? Interim rate review reporting has been done. LADWP rates and equity metrics semi-annual report.
Yes, sir. The report is in your binder. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the February 12th meeting?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
They are approved. Council?
At this point, we will recess into closed session, and in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1, we will report any final actions taken therein.
Can I make a quick request? We have like one very quick item.
We have one item. The very quick part is subject to you all.
Okay, I need to leave by 2. So
I think we all, if you want to do it right away?
Yeah, let's do it right away and then.
Then we can relax.
Yeah. Then we don't have to race through it.
All right, so let me know what data questions I have. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of, work with Gavin and just do a, validation of the information. So we're not going back and forth? Yeah.
But the little stuff right up there, when you get a searchable copy of it. We have scans. But, that and we want to be able to replicate forecasts of the rate